Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Broccoli Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Had Astro Kinesis Quirk. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. The world is in a panic. 10 years ago, scientists started noticing the moon's rapid approach. With the seas rising and the moon waiting to shatter the Earth, humanity is rushing to develop technology to, hopefully, move to another planet. But then there's no need to, because they find the source of the problem. Or well, All Might did for now. Not that he knows it yet. See, All Might was having quite a typical day, just running after a dumb villain, trying to save the day, yada yada. Ran through the sewers after the slimy abomination, smashed through a manhole cover and started saying his favorite catchphrase. Do not fear, for I am here. Except not because something did smash, and this time it wasn't his fist. A huge impact caused the middle of the bridge. The hero, the sludge villain and a middle schooler were under to shatter and crumble in a violent shower of cement pieces. Something made contact with the spot where the villain was about to lunge at the freckled boy and splattered it in thousands of green, gooey pieces and leaving an imprint of its rocky shape into the ground under the bridge. The ground shook violently for only a fraction of a second, but it was enough to make the number one hero fall on his butt. Oh dear! Behind a cloud of dust and a big pile of rubbles that came from what now was a hole in the bridge over their heads, and was that a smoking boulder, All Might could hear some very harsh coughing. That was a little bit reassuring. Soon enough, the clouds started fading and the hero could see the silhouette of a young boy coughing violently, almost retching, crouched on the ground. Young boy, are you all right? Are you hurt? The boy rose a hand as in to say, wait, and his coughing slowed eventually after another 2 retches. I think I'm fine. Except for that ton of dust I just swallowed. The boy had mumbled that last part, but All Might snorted anyway. The boy seemed to have heard and started facing the man with a slight frown, but obviously realized who had appeared, even through the thin veil of dust, since his eyes widened aberrantly and he stuttered in a strangled voice, All Might? Get the cameras closer, we have to get pictures first. Oh sheet. TV crews. His time is running out. There is a teenager probably very addicted to social media and phones right next to him who could spread words of his true form in mere seconds. He probably won't be able to hold his form long enough to get rid of the media, but he certainly can't change back in front of the cameras, and he can't change back now because of Bush Boy Other there. What to do? The boy, surprised by the outburst, gulps when All Might gives him a zip it sign, mimicking a zipper, and then all but yelps when the man proceeds to burst into steam only to leave a very thin, sickly-looking man in his stead. The young boy's eyes are bulging by now and the man gives him a harsh look and another zipper sign, just when a journalist comes into sight. Hey you two over there. Is this where the meteor crashed? The lanky man and the small teen both look at each other in bewilderment. That was a meteor? Oh my god. We could have died. Then the teen looks back at where the boulder now identified meteor crashed along with the rubble. That villain's probably dead. Oh shield. Holy freaking shield. Why do you have T.O. film this? I can't panic, right? Because I can't swear on camera. Never mind. Hakuna your tatas kid, we can't publish your face without your parents' consent. Come on, calm down, take a deep breath, we're not monsters. We're not going to question you if you're freaking out that much. Forget I'm a journalist and even you're breathing. Miraculously, the boy calmed down in front of the surprisingly capable lady. Perhaps she had experience with freaking out teens? Thankfully, heroes and police arrived faster than more news crews, although not by much, so both the young boy and All Might, or, well, Small Might, got to avoid a face full of cameras and mics, and All Might was never so thankful for the existence of Backdraft. That man was a godsend. While Mount Lady, who had just made her debut the same morning, was carefully lifting the rubble under which the villain was still stuck and most likely unconscious. Probably in a very definitive manner, the young boy and himself were both being checked on near the ambulance. Can you give us your name? And a phone number to contact? You don't seem too hurt, but we need to warn your parents. Ah, wise. Midorya Izuku. Ah, so that was his name. Here, my mother's number. It's... Midorya gave out his mother's number, which the man promptly called to inform of the situation. A green blur arrived just 5 minutes later and all but pushed through the crowd in tears and almost through the lanky man on the ground when she launched herself at her son. What a wild day to be alive. Tasha and Nori. A familiar voice called, and when All Might turned around he was greeted with the also very familiar sight of a plain man in a trench coat. Tsukachi. It's surprising that you'd be called for this kind situation. Not that I'm unhappy to see you here. Oh, we were very quickly contacted about something strange with the event. But this isn't the best place to discuss this. Tsukachi approached the still hugging mother and son and Tashinori followed. Tsukachi called out, "Excuse me, ma'am." The small, green lady turned her gaze but didn't let go. "Miss Midorya? I am Detective Tsukachi, and well, to be honest, normally I'd merely ask for your son's testimony, but the truth is that something strange has come up." His gaze shifts to the giant hand of Mount Lady holding on to the meteor for a second. Well, stranger than it already was. "We'd like to take you back to the station so we can discuss in a more peaceful and less stressful environment if that's all right with you. Your son said he was quirkless, is that correct?" They both nod, although the woman narrows her eyes in suspicion at the question. Right, that kind of question must rarely have a nice follow-up. "Would you be willing to follow me to the station? Obviously your son is in no trouble. If our hunch is right, he might even be receiving some very good news." Now that was very strange. Tashinori was about to ask about it, but then he remembered. Tsukachi. Young Midorya. He knows. He knows? Tsukachi frowns, trying to get what the skeleton was getting at. What should very much not be known. He can see the second of the realization. "Oh. Since you're his mother, we are counting on you to help him keep the secret. Obviously you will be paid for your silence, and no, you can't refuse the money since we are legally obliged to pay you." Tsukachi smiles knowingly. The plump woman gazes at the blonde mass of muscle who had been a mere twig a moment ago, then back at the man in trench coat in front of her at the other side of the table. She nodded in acknowledgement. "You said something was strange about the incident. I'm assuming you weren't talking about All Might's identity?" She passes her hand in her son's, who was sitting next to her in his own chair, curly hair. "You're assuming, right? See, we normally would have considered this an unavoidable, although improbable accident. However, a lot of satellites, observatories, and other space observing stations have noticed something strange about this meteor's movement, which we were immediately told about. The meteor was originally moving at a slow rate and away from Earth. However, all of our sources have stated that without any visible outside interference aside from a sudden glow, it very suddenly changed directions and aimed for the very spot where that villain was at incredible speed." "Not sure I quite understand, Mr. Tsukachi. To put it bluntly, we think that your son isn't, in fact, quirkless." Without a word, the woman grabs her son, who could only smile for less than a second before being led by the forearm and made to leave the room. "Mom. Mrs. Midorya, is something wrong?" The woman turns back towards them with a look full of venom, looking like a viper ready to bite. "My son has had to live knowing the rot of this world because of his status. I will not let you abuse of his desperation and mock him with false hope built on half-baked theories. Your secret is safe, Yagi-san. But do not expect courtesy from me, detective. My son gave his testimony. I believe there is no reason to stay any longer. Good day." And she slams the door behind her. That could have gone better. It's understandable. But I'm wondering if he does have a quirk, whether it has manifested when he needed to be saved from the villain, or if it actually manifested when he was 4 and it just wasn't noticed. Living 10 years the life of someone quirkless only to learn he had a quirk all along. Can't say I can relate since I shouldn't have one at all, but I know for sure he'll feel bitter. I just hope that if he does have a quirk, those feelings won't make a villain out of him. 10 years. Currently, Izuku had many regrets. He regretted not insisting on the fact that he could feel himself tugging on something that wasn't quite there all those years. He regretted insisting that he was sure it was his quirk earlier this afternoon and making his mother upset. He regretted leaving the apartment in his anger when she wouldn't listen. But right now, what he really regretted was testing out his quirk without having thought it through beforehand. Izuku stared at the very big growing spot that was very rapidly approaching what was dubbed the garbage beach, upon which he had decided to do his testing. And now he was going to die, right at home among the trash, splattered all over the sand. Great sight. I suppose it's destiny. Izuku. Wait, He couldn't just die, his mother would be all alone. The space rock was coming closer and closer. He needed to do something, he needed to make it stop. Izuku waited, a hand raised towards the object of his impending doom, eyes closed. When nothing came, he gathered the courage to open his eyes and look up. Up there, a mere 15 meters above, was the admittedly huge piece of rock, much bigger than the first one, hovering in mid-air, awaiting to be guided by the hand that shone the same pink color. Entranced, he gave it a tentative shove to the left, and then a shove to the right. It answered to his command. With a giddy laugh, he started making it move in circles in the air. His mother quickly joined him, breathing a relieved sigh and looking up in wonder. Izuku, that's... The boy turns to her with a face-splitting grin. Astronomical objects kinesis. I thought it was just meteor attraction, but it's space-range telekinesis, Mom. His eyes get tearful. I really have a quirk, Mom. A few weeks later, and it turns out that the two recent meteor incidents, the first one on Thursday afternoon in downtown Mizudafu and the second one on Dagoba Beach in the evening of the same day in the same town, were in fact linked not only in location and date. It was soon discovered that the young teenager present in both scenes was misdiagnosed as quirkless while bearing a powerful telekinesis quirk and accidentally attracting both meteors. The boy was exempted from charges for public quirk usage, damages to both public property and the villain that had attacked at the time of the first incident because of the misdiagnosis and lack of knowledge of the quirk and its existence. The specialist responsible for the diagnosis, however, has been taken to court, although the amount of the charges he faces have yet to be known. Next, we stay on our space theme. The moon has yet to stop its course since it started 10 years ago. The Mars base has yet again failed to dash. 10 years ago. It's me, isn't it? I've always felt a constant pull. In the back of my mind ever since I was 4. I'm bringing the moon to us, aren't I? The detective looked honestly apologetic when he answered. I'm afraid so, Midorya. And in that instant, what had been the most beautiful gift that had been bestowed upon his hands became a curse with a meaning that made him wish he was truly quirkless. The world is in a panic. 10 years ago, scientists started noticing the moon's rapid approach. With the seas rising and the moon waiting to shatter the Earth, humanity is rushing to develop technology to, hopefully, move to another planet. But then there's no need to, because they find the source of the problem. Midorya Izuku, 14 years old and falsely diagnosed quirkless, smashes a sludge villain into bits with a meteor brought directly from space using a super powerful long-range telekinesis, and smashing a bridge at the same time. And apparently, he was unconsciously pulling on the moon ever since he manifested his quirk. How funny is that? Now Midorya, I'm sure you're not causing the apocalypse on purpose. Not helping. The boy slammed his forehead on the table and groaned. How do I even stop this? Are you even sure you're the one causing it? Sure, the timeline fits, but it could be a coincidence. We would need solid proof to fit that theory. And then I'd need to find a way to stop my quirk to avoid the biggest and last catastrophe our planet will ever know. Which I'm causing. The man just pat his head in sympathy. Actually, there is a way to stop your quirk and test that theory. Izuku lifted his head. Wait, really? Ever heard of quirk suppressants? Quirk suppressants. This could work. But, Tsukachi-san, where could I get them? Unfortunately for you, you can't just buy them out of grocery stores. It is strictly reserved to volatile and dangerous quirks as well as criminals, and until we prove your quirk is actually causing the end of the world dash. The teen groaned at that. Dash, that's a no-go. But lucky you has someone very close by with the next best thing. Shackles. You're shackling me, The man chuckles. Hey, it's for the sake of humanity. Besides, now you can already know the results. Are you still feeling a pull? Izuku lowers his shackled hands with a grimace, the chain clicking from the movement. He concentrates on the feeling of his quirk, then lets go with a thoughtful look. Actually, I can. Are you sure these shackles work? Tsukachi merely nods with a smile. It's quite usual for very powerful quirks to need more than the usual dose. We just need to add more shackles. Great. After the 5th pair has been added, Izuku stops the man, already approaching with another pair. The pull is still there, but it's weird. The other times it felt I had to pull from far away, but this time. He goes off and starts staring at the table in the middle of the room. He frowns in concentration and the table glows and starts floating in the same pink light that his eyes are emanating. Surprised, the boy releases his quirk, the table falling back down with a loud beam. Were you not supposed to do that? The detective asks, confused by Izuku's reaction. The boy shakes his head. I tried out moving closer objects the other day and I woke up bloody. Mom had to call an ambulance. I see. And do you feel like you could pull far away objects right now? He shrugs in answer. To be honest, I doubt I'd get out of trouble this time if I make a meteor crash again, so I'm not willing to test this theory. I can still feel that it's here, but it's like I'd have to stretch really far to grab onto it. The man stops to think a second and continues. I think we should try it out this way. I'll have someone cut the chains off your shackles and you'll keep them on at all times for a full week. I'll inform someone of our theory and ask them to keep an eye on the moon situation. If movement has completely ceased, then we'll give out our observations to the higher-ups and arrange for you to obtain your own quirk suppressants. Is that okay with you? Izuku nods. Good. If there's any other cataclysms you think you're responsible of, don't hesitate to call and come see me at the station. I'll give you more shackles. Huh? Thank you very much, Mr. Tsukachi. I can't wait to go to school with shackles on Monday. Midorya, for the love of God, why are you wearing bracelets? The entire class turned in sync towards the teen after the teacher's exclamation. All he could do was lower his head between his shoulders in embarrassment and stammer out. Those are quirk suppressants. Silence. And then they all burst out laughing. Aha. Midorya, why are you wearing quirk suppressants when you're quirkless? God, Midorya, you're dumb. He started shaking, tears stinging his eyes. But it's true. You have to have heard about the meteor incident. That was me. Pow. Bakugu Katsuki, king of assholes and living dynamite, produced explosions from his hands and approached menacingly with his permanent scowl mixed in with a vicious grin. Stop effing lying, Deku. I refuse to believe that such a useless nerd could have that kind of powerful quirk. Or even one at all. Just accept you'll always be a quirkless shitstain and stay out of the way of the real Dash. The living explosive was suddenly cut off when a blackboard brush was sent flying from its place on the teacher's desk to smack into his ugly scowl. The brush then fell back down with a thud, leaving a white trace of chalk powder in the middle of his face. The boy was enraged, seething with hot white anger, and he slowly turned towards the rest of the classroom, spreading his dark aura with his gaze. In a dark voice, he said, "Which one of you fuckers has a death wish?" You could hear the crickets. Which one of you fuckers dared to throw something at me? A small, hesitant voice called out. Kakin? He turned his dark glare at the green boy. I did. Stop FNG. Bullshitting, you don't have a goddamn quirk, a-hole. Now who the F did it? I told you I did. Just shut the F up, Deck Dash. This time, no one could deny that the brush flew on its own to shut Katsuki up. Izuku had gotten out of his chair, more irritated than scared right now. How could they keep on denying him his quirk when he had to suffer all these years? Isn't that enough of a proof? Here, just watch. If you don't believe me now, then it's your loss. Under the gaze of 20 pairs of eyes, his own lit a gorgeous pink color, reflecting the tiniest bit on his cheeks, and all the desks and chairs lit up as if to answer a call. Then they started rising, almost touching the roof, and started moving in circles. I'm not quirkless, I'm not Deku, and I never was. The objects flew back to their places in an organized dance, making sure not to hit any of the gaping students, though he was tempted. As soon as his chair was back in place, Izuku sat down. When he realized what he had done, his face turned red and his expression, sheepish. Both the students and teachers were still staring, mouths wide open. Could we get on with the lesson now? Please? Class continued in awkward silence, and soon enough the lunch bell rang. Before Izuku managed to run away with his bento to a calm and desert corner, his classmates had already arranged in a half-circle around his desk, throwing questions and remarks left and right. Wait a sec, how are you using your quirk if you've got suppressants on? Shouldn't it be turned off? Well, my quirk is kinda powerful, so it's only weakened. God, he felt embarrassed by sounding like he was tooting his own horn. Someone gives him a suspicious look. If it's so powerful, why didn't we get to see it before? And now he's even more embarrassed because he's going to sound like he feels superior. Great. Actually, because it's so powerful. I was using it in space all along. The others just stare, even the ones who were doubting him at first. I guess that with that kind of quirk, even someone like you could easily get into UA's hero course. What do you mean, as someone like me? Well, you're a bit. Kinda. Not really. The person was obviously trying to find a nice way of phrasing. You never hesitated when you called me dumb, useless, or a weak waste of space. Why start now? It takes a moment for Izuku to realize that the cold, harsh, unhesitating voice was his, and by that time he had already shouldered past his classmates with his belongings in hand and left the classroom to get to the staff room. He doesn't waste any time, wanting to leave as soon as possible. Excuse me, sensei, I'm feeling quite sick, so I'll be leaving early. I wouldn't want to contaminate everyone else. Contaminate? The word he had heard so many times when people spoke of his quirklessness. That actually never was, and yet ruined 10 years of his life. He does not wait for an answer and takes his leave. The weight of his bright yellow bag feels heavy on his back. He had thought obtaining a quirk would be the best thing to happen in his life, and it is true that his life would become much easier, with how little were the chances of job acceptance when quirkless, how nearly impossible despite his deepest wishes becoming a hero would have been, and the most likely very low quirkless life expectancy that he had never had the courage to research. But somehow, seeing everyone so much more decent, actually talking to him, asking questions, telling him he could have a chance at his dream when all they ever had done was mock him, hit him, hurt him. As if the person they called Deku had never existed and all of a second Midorya Izuku was born. More than all the times he was dragged by the hair or burnt by sparkling hands or head forced into the bowl of the school's toilets. He felt dirted, sullied. More disgusting and disgusted than he had ever felt before. Even Bakugu's, he would try not to call him Kakin anymore, invitation to commit suicide hadn't made him feel as bitter and angry. It was too easy. Nothing had changed from before in him, he just knew something he didn't before, but all of a second it gave him value. He had to cut himself from his thoughts. Great, the bridge road is still blocked off. He'd have to make a detour to go home. But then again, did he really want to go home right away? His mother would surely see something was wrong. Maybe he could walk along the coast and trek home later on? He had all afternoon after all. Yes, that seemed like a good idea, he thought, heading straight towards something that would make him feel even worse. He marched along the sea, wondering how and why there was so much garbage in the water. And then remembered. This was where Dagoba Beach used to lie, above water levels and serving as an illegal dumping spot. But the moon started approaching and the water level rose. And that made him realize. So many houses and sea towns were damaged, people having to move away, some dying, some ending up in the streets. The empty houses that stood along Dagoba Beach's length felt pressuring. Everyone had left, anticipating that soon enough, the water level would not only cover the beach, but the street also. And it was all on him. Even if he managed to learn how to control his quirk and stop the moon's path of death and destruction, the damage was done. He felt sick. Forgetting his wish not to worry his mother by getting home early, he ran all the way back, missing the frail man that had been looking on as well, the 5 pairs of his chainless shackles clinking together in a senseless melody. A week had passed, he failed to spare his mother from worrying, mostly because he came home crying and had barely eaten during the rest of the week. His classmates were oblivious to his torment whenever they had pushed an interaction on him. Apparently, having a powerful quirk meant he had become popular. Deku had stated that just because he now had a quirk didn't mean he was worth shit, yet didn't bully him, which was the one change that had relieved him. He couldn't say he was surprised when Tsukachi called and told him their theory seemed correct and would be further investigated, but he still threw up what little his stomach had contained. At least he would get real suppressants instead of those. What really surprised him was what happened a little over another week later. He was attempting to eat a nem from the takeout his mother had ordered, not having time to cook with work taking most of the day, when she came back from said job, calling Izuku in a hurried tone. Izuku, did you check the mail today? Strange. No, sorry, I forgot. Were you expecting something important? You sound kind of weird. He left the now cold demolished nem he still hadn't managed to eat and left the kitchen, checking on his frazzled mother who was quickly grabbing multiple bags and practically threw one in his face as soon as he had appeared. No, that's not it. There's just so much. Why is there so much mail? Take the bag and follow me downstairs. I most definitely will not be able to take it all in one trip. Is it really that much? It was in fact really that much. Their mailbox was completely full, which didn't mean that much as it was a small apartment mailbox. But over and under the box? Oh boy. Piles upon piles of letters, each pile sporting a small post-it note written Midorya, with one of them having "sorry, wouldn't fit" written as well. Thank God for telekinesis. Following his mother's example, he started stashing as much of the envelopes as he could into the bag he was holding, praying it would not rip from the weight. For the rest of the letters, he decided that doing another trip would be too much of a hassle and used his telekinesis to transport them all the way up, also lightening the weight of the bag on his shoulder and the one in his mother's hands. Once back into their home, he realized that taking bags had been useless but swiftly forgot about it. His mother looked very unappealed by the idea that she'd have to sort through all of the mail, and so he took a pile at random. Here, I'll help you look through them. He trailed off when on the top letter he saw the name of the receiver, but most importantly, the name of the sender. To Midorya Izuku, from Fukagakuen. A hero school. He looked at the next one. Midorya Izuku, Ketsubutsu. Another hero school. Next one. Same name, Aincrad Hero School. The next one is also sent to him by a hero school. As are the rest of them. By the time he has looked at all of the envelopes, he is sure every hero high school in the country has sent him one. Exactly 3 letters are for his mother. The who knows how many others are for him. Some of them are private, extremely expensive hero schools. Some of them are girls-only schools, and even UA had sent him one. Not knowing what to expect, and scared that he might be disappointed by the contents, he decided to leave the UA's letter for last. He took the letters with him, using telekinesis once again to bring them all with him, and went to his room, not wanting to break down in front of his mother in case of bad news. He let most of it fall onto All Might's printed face on the bed and grabbed a small pile to put on his desk, sitting down in front of it. He took a letter at random. It was a white envelope, decorated with an intricate emblem. CI Academy. A very expensive, very elite all-girls hero school. At least he shouldn't be devastated if it's bad. He finally decides to rip the bandage, or well, the letter, and takes out some fancy paper decorated with the same emblem as before. To Midorya Izuku. We believe that some congratulations are in order. It has come to our attention that you recently discovered your quirk, Astro Kinesis, and wish to congratulate you on the happy event. However howevers never sound very good. However, we were warned that your quirk has been ranked X, the only X-ranked quirk in history since it is the first case of planetary threatening quirk, and so is in dire need of teaching to properly control said quirk and limit risks. In such a dire situation, we have decided that despite being an all-girls school, we would be ready to open our doors to you and help you in the development and use of your quirk. Hereafter are the accommodations that we would wish to discuss in the case that you took up our offer. We wish you a good day, and sincerely hope that you will consider us. CI Private Academy. Are they serious? Izuku couldn't help but think. He never even dreamed to find himself in such a situation, where a hero school would basically throw themselves at his feet. Because that's what it was, wasn't it? He shouldn't even be considered by CI, him being male and all. But they were trying to accommodate him where he should be the one adapting to his surroundings. And the charges he couldn't dream of paying fully in his lifetime? Gone. He reread the letter, checking if he had missed anything, and then concentrated back on the fourth sentence. However, we were warned that your quirk has been ranked X, the only X-ranked quirk in history since it is the first case of planetary threatening quirk. Planetary threatening quirk? Isn't it the same as SSS worldwide threat rank? He had never heard of that category before, and it seemed to suggest that it was not, in fact, the same as worldwide threat. He pushed the letter away and decided to get to the next one. This one was from Otori Academy, the school where retro heroes Himamiya and Utena went. No pressure. He opened it with a slightly shaking hand and read. The contents were similar. They were giving him a place within their school, offering tutoring for his quirk and freeing him of tuitions. Well, that wasn't exactly accurate. Because your quirk is of X rank, the Japanese government has decided wiser to pay your tuitions so to make sure that you receive proper guidance. Oh, so it was because of his quirk. CI made it sound like they were doing him a service when they would still receive payment. Izuku decided to make two piles. To consider, and to throw away and put one of the letters he read in each. CI was butt-kissing, so there was no way he was going there. Plus, he'd feel very awkward being the only boy in the school, and that would probably attract a lot of attention as well. Otori, however, he had not considered before, not because of his wish to join All Might's alma mater, though maybe a tiny bit, but because you couldn't join the school unless you were recommended or invited to do so. The school could easily rival UA in its students' education and competence as heroes. Plus, it was Himamiya and Utena's alma mater, and he was very tempted to follow in his favorite gay icon's footsteps. Before he started seriously considering the offer, he remembered that maybe, just maybe, he should read the other letters instead of basing his choice on just two of them. He searched around for all of the all-girls schools and read through them quickly, to be sure they were of the same nature, then put them all in the throwaway pile. Going there was just asking to get beaten up by people wanting to measure their DS. No need to paint a target on his own back when there were other awesome hero schools. He did the same with all male schools, because he definitely didn't feel safe in that kind of TSTRN-filled environment. Gender-specific schools represented a surprisingly big part of hero schools, he realized. It was starting to be late, the clock's needles approaching midnight, and so Izuku decided it was time to sleep, having classes the next day. The rejected letters were tossed in a bag, to throw out the next day, and Otori's was put away in a cardboard box where all of the mail that caught his attention would be put. He moved the unread letters in piles onto his desk to free his bed and passed out as soon as his head made contact with a pillow. The next days at school, he finally found a tactic to avoid his classmates. At the back of the school was a tree, too big to climb into. But who said you couldn't fly into it? Sitting on the box of letters he took to sort through for the day, he used his telekinesis to have it carry him inside the tree. It was on the fourth day that trouble arose. Once safely holding on to the branches, he climbed a bit more until he found the perfect branch to sit onto without accidentally falling off. Finally comfortable and sure that no one would find him, he let go of his telekinesis and opened the box. There were not many letters left, and true to his words, he kept UA for last. He had brought the last 20 free letters and was through 7 of them. Shiketsu did seem interesting. He made sure to keep this one safe. When a girl practically yelled, "You, how can you even like Katsudon?" Time seemed to slow down when the box slipped from between his fingers, hit the branch he was sitting on, and the contents fell in a rain of paper over the 2 eating girls that oblivious Izuku had missed, standing under the tree. Whoops, he'd have to change hiding places. He quickly turned on his telekinesis, bringing back the mail to him. Or well, almost all of it. Izuku was just about to set foot on the ground. Climbing down was much easier than up, an apology ready on his lips for interrupting their moment, when one of the 2 girls exclaimed, "This is a letter from UA." Izuku accidentally let go off the tree and fell on his butt and cringed. Sorry for interrupting you too, I didn't notice you guys were here. See, could I have this back please? He asked hesitantly, lifting himself back up and dusting his pants. One of the girls took the letter and started opening it under the panicked gaze of the freckled boy. You're the Quirkless guy from class 3C, right? It's so weird you'd get something from UA. He was going to protest, but her eyes widened when she looked at the paper and he just knew she had read it. This is a recommendation letter. A recommendation for UA. What? Let me see. Aim takes the letter from her hands and starts reading. Her brows furrow. Quirk? But You don't have a quirk. Midorya Izuku. You stole this, didn't you? What? No, I didn't. My name's on the back. Or you lied to UA. Either way, I'm bringing this to a teacher. I'm sure they'll be able to warn UA that the quirk is fake. Okay, now Izuku is starting to panic a little. It's really not. I discovered it during the meteor incident. Right now you're the meteor incident kid. Come on, Yuki. They take off for the staff room and Izuku follows them in a very fast walk. I promise it's true, you can ask the teachers. Just please don't let them see the letter. He already has to put up with his classmates' fake friendliness. He really doesn't want the teachers trying to get his favors like with Bakugo. The girls squint and walk faster, that's still suspicious. Izuku accepts his fate. I'll wait right outside the door, just give it back when you're done. He lost his hiding place but now he has more reasons to hide. Great. If it's yours. Izuku just glares at them both and Yuki sticks her tongue at him, which he returns because he's not in the mood to simply put up. Only a minute and a half had passed when he heard the teachers cheer. Oh God, it was worse than he thought. He jumps when his homeroom teacher slams the door open and yelps when he gets dragged into the staff room full of celebrating teachers and the two girls from earlier. They both look at him as if he had grown another head. This is why I didn't want them to know, he says to himself. Midorya, why didn't you tell us you were recommended for UA? Oh, I can't wait to see your classmates' faces when we tell them you're going to UA. What? Don't tell them. That. I'm not even sure yet. What? But Midorya, even when you were, Quirkless. Right, that? You wanted to go to UA, did you not? Why run the risk of failing the entrance exams of other schools when you were recommended in UA? He takes a deep breath. You misread that it's not a recommendation. Suddenly there's not a sound in the room. A recommended student still needs to pass a different exam. They're offering me a spot, not a recommendation. But, Midorya, this is even better. You don't have to pass the exam for UA. Or for any Japanese hero school. With the face he made, Izuku almost thought his teacher was choking on his own tongue. It was kind of a pleasant thought. This time, one of the girls responsible for his situation was the one to speak. What are you saying, Midorya? You don't need to pass any of the hero school's exams. He sighs and then gestures to the letter in his teacher's hand. This? I have one for every hero school in the country. Not because I have talent or good grades. Because my quirk is dangerous. May I have it back? The man still looks a bit stunned. Where did the frail Midorya go? But then smiled very wide. Of course, Midorya, here you go. I'm very glad to have managed to help such a great student up to this dash. Don't go tooting your own horn. You didn't do anything. He ripped the letter out of the man's sweaty hands and left. What the hell do you do to your students? I thought only Bakugo hated you. Shut up. As soon as he could, Izuku got through the last 14 letters, keeping Fuka and UA to consider and putting the others separately to throw away. This was done quickly and he now had to choose between the 8 schools that got his interest. As soon as he got home, almost running out of the classroom, he told his mother hello and ran to his room, taking out the already opened mail. Shiketsu, Ketsubutsu, Fuka, Otori, Yuen, Nerve, Skyloft, and Aincrad. Somewhere in the house, he could hear the phone ringing. Oh well, his mother would answer. He focused back on his task. Even though it took 5 days to choose the finalists, he didn't really get to research them very well. Yui he knew by heart. He also knew that Shiketsu was very similar but further to the west. He should probably cross it off the list with that kind of distance. Otori was a school that could rival with UA in terms of result, but he also remembered hearing it was very strict and restrictive with a lot of their students becoming carbon copies of old ones. Maybe it wasn't such a good idea. He threw the letter away, along with Shiketsu's. Ketsubutsu, though a good school, wasn't on par with UA and joined the other 2 in the trash. A quick research about Aincrad quickly changed his mind. The school did not lesinate on the means, using sophisticated virtual immersions to train their students in hyper-realistic simulations. However, forums were witnesses to the brutality of the training, students sometimes stuck in a simulation for weeks on end. Definitely going in the trash. Nerve also seemed to get its students hurt in training frequently, so in the trash it went. That left Fuka, UA and Skyloft. Izuku, could you come down for a second, please? Coming. Maybe Mom could help in the final choice? He took the last 3 envelopes and joined his mother downstairs. She was sitting at the kitchen table, phone still clutched in her hand as well as a note. What's up? UA called. Well, the principal. He froze. What was it about? The C call. They want to meet you in person. Did you accept the offer already? No. I didn't. Maybe they're not sure about it anymore? They want to make sure it wouldn't be a mistake. The green-haired lady pats his shoulder in reassurance. I'm sure things will be fine. Besides, you said you might be interested in some of the other school? Oh. I'm sorry, Midorya-kun, were you not told? You don't have the choice anymore. The oversized rat hands him over a tissue which he accepts as gracefully as he can to wipe the tea he is chalking on while Midnight, pats his back, trying to help with the chalking. What do you mean? I received hundreds of letters, not to sound arrogant. I had nice, long chat with our friends in the government. It was far from cheap, but we managed to buy you into our school. You won't be able to join any other one. Of course, your studies will be paid for, so your mother won't have to worry about that. Any respect he had for you at A's principal went flying out the window. By the face Midnight is pulling, he can tell he's not the only one feeling that way. You bought me? No need to have such a reaction, we're hardly the first. Why? Japan had to pay a heavy price to make sure no other country would get its hands on you. Why do you think taxes are currently being raised so high? The demon rodent smiles wider, most likely fully aware that he was not aware he was ruining everyone's lives again. What? Oh, you can take your time packing, but you'll have to move into UA before the next school year. It's in 9 months, but it'll go by quicker than you might think. Make sure to properly bid your mother goodbye. You're not letting me leave UA? Well, of course not. UA students tend to get quickly known by the media. With a power like yours, we have to make sure you're not made a target. For villains, he didn't need to mention. God, his life as the world is in a panic. 10 years ago, scientists started noticing the moon's rapid approach. With the seas rising and the moon waiting to shatter the Earth, humanity is rushing to develop technology to, hopefully, move to another planet. But then there's no need to, because they find the source of the problem. Midorya Izuku, 14 years old and falsely diagnosed Quirkless, smashes a sludge villain into bits with a meteor brought directly from space using a super-powerful long-ranged telekinesis, and smashing a bridge at the same time. And apparently, he was unconsciously pulling on the moon ever since he manifested his quirk. How funny is that? Now the only problem is to teach him how to use his quirk before the end of the world is brought upon them. And what better place to teach him than Hero School UA? I am pleased to announce that it has been confirmed your classmate Midorya secured a spot in UA's hero course. Izuku grit his teeth, fingers tightening in a painful hold around his charred notebook. Secured a spot. Honestly, the boy had to bite his tongue to not lash out at his teacher who had no right to share the information. People had stopped bullying him, he was not about to give them a reason to start it back up by sounding ungrateful, although he really was. Someone else seemed to have a similar problem. Right? He forgot about Bakugu's underdog backstory plan. Well, that didn't really work out. He just hopes that his rise in value would be enough for him to not attack in public. The glare he sent tells him that he better not go into any kind of isolated alley. Oblivious to his internal seething both hot white and dark rage, his classmates cheer for him, congratulating him, some applauding him. One ballsy lady with a fire quirk gives him a slap on the back, and Izuku is this close to biting her hand off, but again, restrains himself because he doesn't want to ruin his oh-so-great reputation. Besides, he doesn't want to leave any spoilers for his beautiful, beautiful end of the year speech. Because his principal thought asking him to do it was a good idea. That man really isn't ready for what Izuku's got in store. Eventually the cheering subsides and classes continue on, Izuku only half listening. Weaknesses, too cocky. Thinks for real threats and probably won't expect a mere attack on his image. Most likely won't know how to react to immature, irrational actions. Also, planning is useless if there is no way to avoid the threat. Most likely cannot counter improv effectively. If he was getting fed over, the rat was going down with him. Skit Stuart Little, says Izuku as he throws his wig on the floor, and all at once every single robot from Arena B wait scratch that, every single arena of UA's entrance exam go flying into the sky in a pink trail of light. Slowly every single student starts looking around in confusion, trying to understand what happened after Present Mike announced the start. Sorry listeners, we've got a little problem. Just stand by while we take care of it. Izuku has sneaked into UA's entrance exams under a false name. Izuku has launched every single one of UA's entrance exam robots into space. Izuku knows Niza hates when things don't go as he predicted. Izuku is pleased. And so, Izuku turns to leave, except someone is holding him by the arm. Excuse me, where do you think you're going? We were asked to stand by. Izuku smiles. Oh, but I think I have more than enough points to pass. More than, you don't actually think you're going to pass only with the written exam, do you? Even if you could, he is no place for such arrogance. The greenette signs, shaking his head, not quite annoyed but more like he is scolding an ignorant child. Which looks very weird, because the other one is a lot taller than him and looks like he could break him in half, although that wouldn't be very hard for anyone. Also, those legs are spooking Izuku. They're too bulky. I just took out every single robots in all of the arenas except the 0-pointers since they were underground and I didn't want to cause collateral damage. If I'm not wrong, the lightest were the 1-pointers and the largest were the 3-pointers with the 2-pointers in between. At that point, a few contestants have started to listen in on the conversation, curious about what was happening. There are 25 arenas within each. I felt 100 1-pointer, 72 pointers and 55 3-pointers plus the 0-pointers. 100 plus 140 plus 165 makes 405. Times 25. The boy nods to himself, before declaring loud and clear to the gaping teen and the crowd around him, 10,125. Oh neat, I beat the record by 10,002 points. That you did, Midorya-kun. The screen on which was previously present Mick's face now shows Izuku's current nemesis, and all of the gathered middle schoolers are starting to wonder if they accidentally stumbled onto the shooting of a movie. Were we supposed to take a message from this? The rat smiles, most likely having guessed what the answer was before having even asked the question. Izuku deduces from the twitch of his eye. Izuku smirks. Don't pick wars you can't win. Midorya locked the door to his studio. He called it a jail cell in front of the staff, and pocketed his keys before making the small trek towards the main building of UA, his face a bit red and eye bags large from all the crying he had done that night instead of sleeping. Most of his stuff had been moved to UA weeks earlier. He needed to make sure everything was there. It was a definitive stay after all, or that's what the rat had planned. It was only 2 days ago that he moved in and 3 days since he told his mother the truth. Obviously, he hadn't wanted his last 9 months with his mother to be lived in misery, so he had lied to her, pretended it was dorms and that he'd be back during the holidays, and waited until the last minute to reveal the lie. He wished he hadn't waited so long. If he hadn't, maybe he could have gotten her out of that catatonic state before he was forced to leave her. Now all he knew was that she was sent to a psychiatric ward, paid oh so generously by UA, until she'd get better. He knew she wouldn't get better until she'd see him again. He also knew they may never see each other again. Izuku slapped himself out of his daze, realizing he was already in front of Class 1's door just waiting to be opened. And to think he once would have given anything to be here. It's funny how things can change so much in less than a year. Finally, he pushed the door open, greeted by the sight of the resident villain Arudra hero in training bickering with some tall guy that looked vaguely familiar to Izuku. Of course, The greenette didn't even want to see the blonde's ugly scowl, and so he just headed for the back of the class to wait until the a-hole would finally shut his mouth. But obviously Izuku is the unluckiest motherhuger in existence, because while the candy cane guy tried to be subtle about the staring the ponytail girl, despite Izuku appreciating the kind gesture, was not very discreet in remarking that, "You look like you just cried, and, do you need a tissue?" And Izuku cursed himself for having not bothered to clean up his face before heading here. It wouldn't actually be a problem if it hadn't brought the attention of Glasses in the front, who stalked towards the greenette like a man on a mission, and oh boy, Izuku did not want to have to talk to anyone at all. 10,000 points Kuin. And absolutely everyone in the classroom turns towards him to his deep, deep misery. "Excuse me if I'm wrong, but you are the 10,000 points boy from the entrance exam, aren't you?" Izuku sighs the deepest sigh he has ever sighed, making the bird-headed guy just a tiny bit envious of his sigh, before correcting, "Actually it was 10,102, but carry on." There's a growl at the front, and he has no doubt as to who it came from. "I am from semi-private academy. My name is Ida Tenya. I must say I am truly honored to be taking classes with someone who possesses such astounding skills." Skills is kind of a big word. I literally got my quirk like that. "Nice to meet you anyway, Ida-kun. I just wish it was in better circumstances." Before Ida can question what better circumstances is supposed to mean, the other is already changing subjects. "Oh, I never got to know what kind of test they made you pass in the end." "It's true you had gone before you got to know. It was actually a good thing you left the 0-pointers. We were put in teams and were judged on our efficiency as a group to take them down." Izuku is feeling an intense glare upon him and grins because he knows for sure that Bakugo not only lost first place to him, but most likely couldn't even get second because Bakugo and teamwork? It's a miracle he even got into UA with that kind of test. A girl enters the classroom and takes her seat, prompting Izuku and his new friend, where they? To take a seat themselves. Some kind of caterpillar evolving into a caffeine addict in black follows into the classroom. Izuku is already thinking of many butterfly-related puns. The man introduces himself as Aizawa Shoyuta and hands them each a gym uniform before sending them to the training field for a quirk assessment test. Fun, you say? Fun. Last place can pack their bags. But of course, Aizawa catches the wild grin on Izuku's face. "Except you, Midorya. For some reason, I'm not allowed to expel you, but I can still give you supplementary work, so don't even think about slacking off." God damn it. Izuku was really counting on being an annoying little sheet by not putting an ounce of work in this, but at the same time, not only would that get him more schoolwork, but it would also be detrimental to his training since despite it all, he was still planning on becoming a hero. Maybe he could research Indian schools? He'd have to test out whether his online researches were tracked. That'll be fun. He needed to find another way to get on his nerves. Izuku glanced back at his prison classmates, searching for some kind of idea. This test was so dumb anyway, it was super biased. What was he expecting the invisible girl to do? That electric boy? Hypno guy? One of them would inevitably end up last without some kind of help, and they couldn't. Wait, no one said they weren't allowed any outside help. Izuku's grin would have scared more than one classmate if they weren't fixed on Bakugo's explosion-propulsed ball toss. "You won't be getting first place today either, Kaken." "He's gonna fall?" One of the blonde student who was propulsing himself over the running track and unluckily tripped backwards when his quirk failed him was lifted of the ground in a pink light and zoomed across to the end like a rocket with a terrified squeal. 2.7 seconds. The little machine says, followed by a 4.39 seconds, when the pink girl crosses the end line herself. Aizawa very obviously glares at the very smug-looking green-haired boy. "What? You said they had to use any kind of asset." Networking is a very important asset. You can't always beat a villain on your own, so you get other heroes to help you. Shouldn't it apply here as well? The man looks even more tired than before, and Izuku knows he won that battle. Most of his classmates end up with the same scores, and he gains many friends that day. He also gets called a pain in the butt by a cool underground hero, so that's a plus in Izuku's books. And Bakugo ended up 12th. That was nice as well. After school, he heads to Recovery Girl to get his day shot of quirk suppressants and his emergency night dose, just in case the suppressants fail, so he can dose himself without Recovery Girl. She's scowling when he arrives, but quickly pushes away her foul mood when she sees the greenette. Must have had another argument with Nizu about how human trafficking was not okay. Izuku really liked Recovery Girl. "How are you doing, Midorya?" she asks while whipping some disinfectant on his inner elbow, where she usually gave the injection before putting the needle in place. He shrugs in the universal sign for meh. She doesn't let the lack of vocal answer deter her and pushes the needle in. "You've had trouble sleeping, haven't you? I swear those eye bags could beat Aizawa's any day." He nods, a small smile on his face at the joke, but it fades soon enough, the exhaustion from the day and his situation in general weighing down on his shoulders. "Midorya, you know it's okay not to be okay, right? Especially with, well, everything." She takes out the empty syringe just in time because Izuku starts shaking, and when she meets his eyes they're closed with tears just starting to leak. "Oh, Midorya." She quickly puts away the syringe and bottle of disinfectant and climbs on a stool to reach her arms around his shoulders. There, you can let it out. And it's just the right thing to say." He dissolves into sobs and cries and wails while she gently pats his back, offering the company and comfort he needs desperately in that moment. I just... won't he even let me see her? Everything's so fed up. I'd gained a stupid quirk and I lost my home, my freedom, the thigh. A heavy sob racks his body. Recovery Girl lets go of him with a kind smile and retrieves a paper handkerchief for him to wipe his face, which he accepts gratefully, his cries slowly receding to sniffles, and eventually he's chuckling in a bitterness that Chio really doesn't like. "I just can't believe things turned out like that, you know? One day I'm this quirkless weakling that should die for daring to breathe the same air as those with quirks, and the next I have a quirk so good people forget stuff like laws and human rights just to get their hands on it. That's crazy, isn't it? I'd have done anything to get a quirk, and now that I've got it, it's the worst thing that ever happened to me. One day, Chio will murder this DMN rat for ruining this sweet boy. Midorya, look at me." He wipes the tear tracks off his face. "Your mother will get better. The staff, everyone that knows, me, Lunch Rush and Cementos, us three are fighting Nizu against this. You're not alone, and if you ever need anything, we're all here for you. All right?" He nods, and this time the smile is genuine. Now, would you like me to tell your homeroom teacher about your situation? You might want the support." "Oh gods no. Jokes are a lot less funny when the recipient is pitying you." Chio chuckles, already hearing Aizawa's complaints about that DMN problem child. "You'll have to tell me all about the pranks you're planning then," she says while handing him a handful of energy candy. Gods know he really needs both the sweets and the energy right now, which he takes, a warm feeling blossoming in his chest at the kindness of the woman and the smell of coffee wafting in the room. "I will," he says softly, making sure she can understand how grateful he was with all the support she gave him in the little time he's known her. Obviously, it's at that moment that his stomach decides to growl, breaking the soft atmosphere. Can he not have one good moment without any kind of interruptions? He laughs awkwardly, seeming to register the scene before seemed like a grandmother and her grandson more than a nurse and a student, incredibly embarrassed and face flushed, not from tears anymore. "Guess I forgot to eat breakfast? I'll just go and, have lunch." She smiles, happy to see he isn't ready to burst out in tears anymore. "You do that, young man. I'll see you around." He runs out of the door with his uniform vest in hand, his other hand already fumbling for his studio key. The old woman sighs, a bit dejected. "And I just told him I wouldn't tell you." The curtain to one of the beds is pushed away, and here is Aizawa, a coffee cup in hand and a thoughtful look on his face. His sleeping bag abandoned on the bed. That problem child. Why is he here really? Chio sighs, weary. "I'll explain what you heard to avoid any kind of misunderstanding, but I won't go into details by respect for Midoriya's wishes. Okay, maybe there are some small, very, very, very small, consolations to being taken to you." Izuku thinks as All Might is strolling into class in a very unnatural way. Someone notes that All Might's wearing his Silver Age outfit, and yes, to Izuku's utter delight, he is. This might just be the one class where Izuku won't annoy the F out of the teacher, apart from math with Cementos because hey, the man is on Izuku's side. The hero explains the gist of the subject he's teaching, hero basic training, in an exciting speech and sends them all to change into their hero costumes and join him at ground beta. Izuku was practically skipping to the changing rooms, mallet swinging at his side. What the f, Deku, you look like a 5 years old. Bakugo says in his usual very polite way with a mocking grin on his face, placing one of his huge, unpractical gauntlets. Excuse you, I look like a stylish 5 years old, thank you very much. Izuku puts his hair clip in place and grabs the fluorescent plank that was placed in the mallet along with his costume. He readies himself to leave, Ida already waiting for him outside, but stops himself to send one last jab at the angry Pomeranian. Besides, not only is it the pot calling the kettle black, but my costume doesn't have the glaring fault of screaming what my quirk is at the enemy. And he slams the door just fast enough to avoid the boot that's aiming for his face. Uraraka, please tell me your costume is astronaut-themed. The brunette turns around to meet a starry-eyed greenette in. Is that? The boy in front of her is short, his size being accentuated by just how childish the outfit seems. He's wearing what seems to be a full-body black suit on top of which are a short-sleeved green jacket and a pair of shorts, gloves and shoes of the same color, all with white accentuations. There's also a white pouch attached by a metal ring to his belt with a big green sparkle shape and a tiny sparkle-shaped, slightly iridescent zipper. There's another one on his jacket zipper and 2 more on the white flaps of his shoes and a pink one on a hair clip. There's also a very cool skateboard under his arm, except it doesn't have wheels, so it's not really a skateboard, just a green plank with pink sparkles and shoe prints, but it looks like a skateboard and it's pretty and it suits the boy. This person is basically the cutest thing Ochako has ever seen in her entire life, but then the color scheme is reminding her of something and it might just be the best day of her life. Is that a UFO-themed costume? His grin widens and she can't help but join him in his excitement when he turns around to show the pink fluorescent UFO on his back. We match. This is so cool. Midorya, was it? It's too bad they made mine so skin-tight. I wish I had something over it like your jacket and shorts. I just feel horribly naked like that. Maybe you can get support to change it up a bit? I was pretty thorough with the details of mine since I wanted basically everything to have a function other than just aesthetics, so I got pretty much exactly what I wanted. Oh, good idea. I'll do just that, she says before they both turn towards All Might to hear his answer to Ida's question. The hero explains that they'll be set in teams, and to Uraraka's utter delight, she ends up with her space buddy. It must be fate. I'm counting on you. And for the first fight, the teams will be. All Might takes out 2 random letters from 2 boxes with heroes and villains written at the front. Team D, young Ida and Bakugo, as villains, and Team A, Midorya and Uraraka, as heroes. Everyone else, head towards the monitor room. Before the 2 teams can part, and Uraraka is feeling increasingly uncomfortable under the glare of the blonde guy, Midorya heads towards the boy clad in armor and pats his shoulder, shaking his head in sympathy. I am so sorry for who you ended up with. Explosions rung and Uraraka never ran so fast in her entire life. Tenya was having fun despite being on the villain team for their first training exercise. Yes, his teammate wasn't very cooperative and he had to fight Midorya, his first friend, who was very powerful from what he had witnessed until now. To be honest, he expected to be dragged out by Midorya with his telekinesis, at least that's what he thought it was. So imagine his surprise when he turns around and the bomb is considerably closer to the window, Midorya waving at him sheepishly and Uraraka one hand through the open window and just a second from touching the bomb, looking like she got caught with a hand in the cookie jar. Then Midoriya's expression changes to one of horror, looking at something over Tenya's shoulder, and yells, "Touch the bomb." There's smoke, explosions and a lot of cursing. But the voice of All Might is clear when it declares, "Hero team wins." And Tenya is not sure what he's witnessing when the smoke starts clearing. The hero team is huddled on Midoriya's green and pink floating skateboard looking like they're playing the floor is lava, except it's more like the floor is an angry living dynamite stick that's trying to kill us, and now the dynamite stick is learning how to fly using his explosions, and Midoriya is skating in the air as best as he can while Uraraka is holding on to his leg like her life is depending on it, which it kind of is, while avoiding the angry blonde's hits. What is his life? Young Bakugo, the exercise is over. Please refrain from harming your classmates and come back to the monitor room, all of you. All Might's voice resonates and the blonde finally relents, although not without mumbling something that sounds suspiciously like, "This isn't over, you Demon Deku," and they part from the building, albeit the hero team keeps their distance and fly towards the meeting point. Thankfully, the day seems to go without further problems. Each team passes and receive a rundown and critique of their performance, and no one tries to murder anyone again, although Bakugo seems like he'd really like to. Lunch goes smoothly as well, Ida, Uraraka and Midoriya eating all together and talking about what kind of quirks they possess. They're surprised to learn that Midoriya was under suppressants during their match and the entrance exam, and Ida can't help but have further admiration for his classmate and his powerful quirk. But they're happy to keep him compagnie while he's getting his shot at the nurse's office. Afternoon classes feel like a breeze next to the intensity of training, and soon enough the day is over. "Oh, you guys want to walk to the station together?" Uraraka runs after them in the corridor, waving a hand wildly at them before stopping herself in front of them, waiting patiently for an answer which, while Ida is happy to provide, seems to fluster a lot their green-haired friend that seems to pale ever so slightly. He did not plan for that kind of event. Of course, it will be a sure way to bond as fellow classmates. How about you, Midoriya? God damn it. He really wants to stay with them too. Oh well. You see, Iu-dash. Never in his life did Izuku think that one day he would be so happy to get dragged off by Bakugo. Can you blame him? It's usually followed by a beating. Okay, he's basically being chalked because the bud is pulling on his collar, but at least he doesn't have to explain he is not allowed to leave the campus, which would lead to these two making a lot of awkward discoveries, such as UA doing human trafficking. Of only one person, yes, but still human trafficking. Bakugo, what are you doing? TC. The blonde stops, pulling to Izuku's relief, who takes a big gulp of air after getting chalked. I'm borrowing the nerd for a while. No way. You've been nothing but idiot to him until now. Nope. He's not letting go of his emergency exit. It's all right, Uraraka. We knew each other in middle school. Are you sure? Ioich. The a-hole starts pulling again, and Izuku is taken away under the worried gaze of his two new friends despite the reassuring smile and thumbs up he's forcing himself to wear. Well, maybe his face turning blue might not be a good sign of health. He's pulled all around the main building, the training grounds being closed off, before the other gets mad. And Gishit, is there nowhere in this place where we can have a private goddamn conversation? Thankfully, he finally lets go of his hold on Izuku, who takes the chance to catch his breath, although the look of annoyance on the blonde's face worries the greenette just a little bit. That if you can keep a secret, I might know a place? Of course I can keep a secret, fucker. Of course I can keep a seeker, don't punch me please. Bakugo glares but is apparently in a good enough mood not to punch him, so Izuku makes a "follow me" gesture before departing towards the east part of UA's campus, the other getting increasingly annoyed by the long trip. The two enter UA's private woods, and after a few turns, the blonde's patience is at its limits. Are we effing you there yet? It's right here. Sorry, there ain't gonna be any FNG though. He growls, but Izuku ignores him, and they take a final turn out of the main path. There, Katsuki can see a rather modern and clearly very recent building, not very big but not too small either. Enough for a small family. It doesn't look exactly like a house, but Katsuki's not sure what he should call it. There's a doorbell, so it must be residential. The greenette quickly climbs the stairs and exclaims, "Welcome to mi casa." Or as I like to call it, my jail cell. What? He ignores him in favor of opening the door and pushes Bakugo through the tiny corridor towards a living room with a gray couch and a coffee table. There's also a TV screen on the wall, but the remote is still sealed in its box, so it mustn't have been used yet. I got coffee, tea, chocolate, or some fruit juice if you want. Just take a seat and I'll be back with all that sheet. And he's gone. Okay, what the F dash? What the actual F dash? Katsuki wasn't sure of what was going on right now as he sat on the admittedly very comfortable couch, almost falling backwards from how much he was sinking. The Deku he knows is a crybaby. He doesn't swear. He definitely wouldn't be a sheethead to his teachers. And most importantly, he didn't live at UA. Obviously he was wrong about all of that. He was sitting in his living room. And he just said the word, sheet. He made a joke about if and G, for Christ's sake. And it's like he was begging to be expelled. There was some weird shit going on, not only with Deku but with UA too, and Katsuki did not like that at all. So I'm all out of coffee. Nope. Katsuki absolutely did not almost sheet his pants. When did that fucker get here anyway? Don't do that, fucker. Do what? Deku takes a place on the couch while a box of tea bags, chocolate powder and a bottle of orange juice settle down on the coffee table in a pink glow along with 2 glasses and 2 mugs with spoons. As polite as usual, Katsuki grabs the bottle of juice and just chugs it. I was gonna drink some of that. Apparently not because there ain't any more. The greenette sighs and then turns towards the blonde, tucking his feet on the couch. So, you wanted to talk? Oh yeah, with all that weird shit he almost forgot, but it could wait a little. Weird shit first. You live at UA. No, I live in Texas obviously. You know what I mean. Yeah. I'm not exactly supposed to tell you or even show you this place, but I figured if it was just one person it would be okay. Even if it's, a hand gestures wildly in Katsuki's overall direction. I mean, you wouldn't tell anyone because you'd rather die than help me, so I figured the secret would be safe. Why the F would you keep it secret? I smell some bad shit you're hiding, Deku, and I'm going to find out. You could just ask, you know. You remember how I may or may not have caused a meteor crash? The blonde scoffs but lets him continue. Well, imagine if I could do the same with, let's say, satellites. But like, natural, not man-made satellites. For example, the moon. You're shitting me. I wish. And what the sheet does that have to do with you being here? Well, wouldn't that kind of quirk make a nice ultimate weapon if controlled? All the small pieces come together with that one sentence and it feels like an elastic band finally being released after being stretched to its limits. You can't leave. You let me take you on purpose so you didn't have to tell those extras. You can't leave UA. The greenette winces, nodding in response to the statement with a little "Yua." Holy F***, sheet, you don't want to be here. That's why you've been a moody piece of shit since last year. It was the same time that fucker said you got a spot at UA. Can you blame me? If I escape, Nizu says they'll warn the population and, well, with a quirk like mine, how many bullets will I be able to dodge before they succeed in killing the guy that's put the entire planet in danger? It would be a worldwide manhunt. Why do you think I chose to dress like a 5-year-old? I'm hoping developing an image of innocent cutie pie might avoid that kind of situation if my quirk is ever made public. Yeah, okay, that makes a lot more sense. He did wonder why the Deku wasn't a blatant all-might plagiario with his suit. And he could get behind that logic. But you need to be cute to have a cutie pie image. Off, I'm adorable. Deku says with an indignated expression. This, the blonde exclaims, holding the empty bottle of juice in Deku's direction, almost smacking him in the face with it. That sheet too. You don't swear. Yes, I do, he answers, pushing the bottle away. No, you effing you don't. Stop swearing, it's bothering me coming out of your mouth. I can hear you swear all I want. Not if you want people to think you're cute, sheet for brains. Yeah, well. Sheet that you're right. His shoulders drop and Katsuki snickers in victory. The two fall into silence, Deku taking the time to down a scalding hot mug of tea without even wincing, which Katsuki is mildly impressed with, although he'd rather die than say it out loud. Katsuki's not sure what to say. He originally planned on finding out how the nerd could beat him, not once or twice but a grand total of 4 times, and yes, he counted Deku getting in UA first as a loss because because how could a weak, useless nerd beat him even once? But now that he knew what was going on, he felt like his problems were That's small. He felt like he was being an a-hole and he hated that feeling. He felt like he was in the wrong, but how could that be possible? He was Bakugo Katsuki. He was never wrong, never weak, and he never lost to anyone, and especially not to someone as weak as Deku. But that was the thing. Deku wasn't weak anymore. Deku was stronger than Katsuki. And Deku hasn't been Deku since he got that quirk. Why'd you bring me here? Why did you take me to your place? Why did you tell me about all this sheet storm? You hate me and I certainly don't appreciate your nerdy butt. Leave my perfect butt out of this, thank you. The greenette laughs and circles his knees with his arms, holding his face on top. I don't know. I guess I wanted company. His eyes are closed and Katsuki almost missed that last part. I feel like I'm going insane, staying here all alone. God, Katsuki hated feeling like he was wrong. You're not a teacher. That's the understatement of the century, thinks Izuku about his own statement. The intruder alarm just set off while Izuku was on his way to Recovery Girls like every lunchtime, and he thought it would be the perfect timing to leave a few surprises here and there for the rats since all the teachers would be out dealing with the press. What he didn't expect when he passed by the teacher's lounge was a blue-haired, wrinkly, crusty guy to be looking through All Might's desk of all things. And the guy had the gall to stare at him as if he was the one doing something very suspicious. Aren't you hearing the alarm? Izuku just smirked. I am. All the better to leave a few spiteful gifts lying around for one tiny but PSS of sheet, he says, unfolding a poster of an old animation movie from pre-Quirk era with a rat holding a spoon whose face was crudely drawn over. The man laughs, evidently finding Izuku to be amusing. Shitting on your principal? That doesn't sound very heroic. Maybe I'm not so heroic. I've recently been finding myself thinking that hero society might just be a bad thing that should be erased. Still going to report your presence though. Red eyes widen, realizing that he was caught by a student rummaging through All Might stuff, and he calls, Kurogyri, before disappearing in some kind of weird purple smoke. What the sheet? Okay, maybe Izuku hated Nizu's guts and maybe he wanted to see him go down in flames. But that really seemed like something the rat should know. He speed-walked to the pest's office and didn't even knock before slamming the doors open. Midorya. Is this about that object I found stapled to my door this morning? Izuku vaguely glances at the rat plushie with the head stuck in a rat trap before reminding himself it wasn't the right moment to laugh at the rat. I found a surprise in the staff room. And by that I mean there was an a-hole looking through All Might's desk. I assume it was accompanied by the rest of its body? Bad Izuku. Don't laugh at the rat's joke. And some outside help, from what it seemed. The Kurogyri. I didn't get the crusty fucker's name though. I see. Any more information? The guy had grayish blue hair, crusty wrinkly skin, red eyes, and wearing full black like some kind of villain in a bad children's movie. Didn't get to see what he was looking for, but he had no mic, cameras, or any kind of notepad, so I doubt he was a journalist. His buddy sent in some purple smoke and he disappeared, so that must have been some kind of teleportation quirk. I got nothing more. The rat seems all too pleased and that makes Izuku feel like being petty. That seems like more than enough for now. We'll start an investigation immediately. You did a good job, Midorya. See how things can go when we work together. To be fair, I saw it because I was on my way to prank you, so much better without the smile. Then I think it's about time you go, Midorya. Sure thing. See you in the kitchen, Remy. He takes the time to stick his Ratatouille poster on the door under the irritated gaze of Nizu and takes his leave. Katsuki was currently plagued by the bag sitting on his bed. Not his school bag, obviously. This one was ready and already in hand. No, this one was a black sports bag filled with a sleeping outfit, a hairbrush, a toothbrush, toothpaste, a couple of All Might movies as well as a spare uniform. His pride was telling him to leave that bag right here and forget about it. The feeling he discovered yesterday was telling him to grab that FANG bag and just go to school already. I feel like I'm going insane. God damn it. The blonde grabbed the bag and slipped it over his shoulder. That fucker better be grateful. Old hag. I'm spending the night at Deku's. He doesn't wait for an answer and leaves. Midorya. 13 is space themed too. I love 13. Uraraka squeals the last part aggressively and Izuku can't help but grab her arm and shake it in excitement, barely restraining himself from jumping in place as well. I do hope you'll behave this time, Midorya. Poor Ida had embraced his role as vice president and he had already shown great potential as class mom. Of course, Izuku had also fully embraced his self-appointed title of pain in the butt with a big fat 0 during the class president votes. To be honest, he was glad no one had voted for him. Voting for him would have been dumb considering the great show of respect and responsibility he had made since the start of the year. And really, it's not like he planned on still being here by the end of the year. Of course I will. All Might's gonna be here after all. All Might's not here. Ida doesn't even need to see the Greenette's face to know what it looks like right now and sighs internally, already knowing that this morning's butterfly wings sewn onto Aizawa's coat won't be the only prank they'll be seeing today. I beg of you, at least listen to 13. It seems his demand is not needed. As soon as the words, "It's a power that can easily kill," leave the space-themed hero, the Greenette's head turns so fast Ida is honestly concerned about the state of his vertebrae. 13 continues explaining the potential danger of quirks and Izuku can't help but feel worse with each word that registers, a submerged beach coming to his mind. Sometimes he wondered if he could ever reverse what he had done, but he was also terrified. What if in attempting to move the moon back, he just f'd up things even worse? What if he did it too fast and the sudden lack of pull on the oceans created worldwide tsunamis and other not-so-natural catastrophes? Will there ever be a time where he wouldn't be on quirk suppressants? His thoughts were cut off by the voice of his, unfortunately no longer butterfly wings clad since he shed his coat, homeroom teacher. Gather together and don't move. 13. Protect the students. What's that? Kirishima asks, and Izuku follows his gaze. There's a familiar purple smoke. The same kind he saw in the teacher's lounge. The many people coming out of it further confirms Izuku's theory. It's the same quirk. These guys, they already tried to infiltrate at lunch the other day. Everyone turns towards him, the teachers just now realizing that Midorya was who had given the informations Nizu had shared. I caught the front guy messing in the teachers' lounge during the alarm and he left in this purple stuff. We need to contact Nizu. Thankfully, Izuku doesn't need to explain further before Aizawa decides to take the safest and most efficient route he can think of. The man adjusts his goggles on his face and readies himself to fight. Izuku's limbs are trembling as an army of villains leaves the purple gate. But he needs to keep his cool. Remember, you could kill every single person on Earth in one move. They've got nothing on you. I see. Everyone stay back. Kaminari, try and contact the school. Did they only appear here or are they all around school? Only here. Izuku decides to reassure his classmates, I'm not feeling any additional presence apart from those right here. 13. Evacuate the students. If they could counter the sensors, then it's most likely we won't be able to contact the school from here. W8. You're not going to be fighting by yourself, are you? Even if you can erase their quirks, you'll still be overwhelmed. Your fighting style is more of a capturing after erasing the quirk thing. What? You're a cool hero. The teacher gives him a look that loosely translates to, how the F, do you know all that shit about me, then turns around, walking towards the horde of villains. No good hero is a one-trick pony. I'm leaving them to you, 13. Izuku wants to scream and run after his teacher when he jumps down upon the villains, but he realizes his classmates don't need more stress than what they're already under. The man's scarf waves wildly around him, his fingers holding on to them in a stance that Izuku recognizes as Eraserhead ready to take the villains down. Calm down, Izuku, he has it under control. The first wave of villains is cocky and most importantly unknowledgeable. They don't expect their quirks to fail on them and are quickly tangled within the white strips and taken down. The next villains, 2 mutant types, get easily knocked down as well, and Izuku can't help but feel much more reassured. If they all keep coming in small waves like dumbass, then they shouldn't stand a chance. Also, as much as he likes to troll him, Izuku can't help but internally fanboy because Eraserhead is a FA basis. 13 gets them to move, but a wall of purple smoke cuts their escape short. Yellow slits shine within the smoke, giving a face to the dark mass. So that's Kurogyri? Nice to meet you. We are the League of Villains. We have come here to UA High School in order to kill All Might the Pillar of Peace. What? I believe All Might should have been here. Has there been some kind of change? Calm down, Izuku. Their objective isn't here. They only need to escape. He needs a plan if that guy is going to block the doors. Slowly but surely, he gets closer to Kirishima. Hey, don't panic, but I'm going to throw you all through a window and you're going first for safety. Get help ASAP. Kirishima gapes and Izuku's eyes light up in pink, surrounding every single one of his classmates. This speech empty, he murmurs while staring the smoke cloud right in its yellow eyes. Everyone raises from the ground, some of them yelping from not expecting the move and others cursing, Bakugu. Why? Every single villain, from the mass in the plaza to the teams scattered in the rescue zones, turns towards the source of the high-pitched scream poor Kirishima produced when he went through one of the glass panels of the USJ, with his quirk activated thankfully. The 19 students follow him through the hole, carefully avoiding any lingering shards of glass, Bakugu yelling, "You better wreck him, Deku." And they all start running towards the main part of campus, Ida zooming past them to get reinforcements faster. It's obvious no one expected this move. Most villains ceased movement and 13 is staring at him. Then there's a laugh, a cackle. The guy from the other day is laughing, then suddenly he stops. Kurogyri. Sheet, he shouldn't have turned his back, but it's too late. Izuku is already sinking into the smoky gate and falls down on his knees next to Krusty, still in the same clothes as the other day. Which is kind of gross. Midorya. 13 calls. A little FANG late if someone would ask him. Before Izuku can even think of running, the man is holding on to his wrist with 4 fingers on one hand. Izuku wiggles and pulls, but he only holds tighter, and with his other hand, he reaches out to the other villain at his side. A massive beast with black skin and exposed brain. His skin rots and falls into dark gray dust as soon as 5 fingers make contact. I wouldn't do that if I were you. The man smirks down at him, and the shivers down his spine lose themselves in the incessant trembling of his body. Tears burn at the corners of his eyes, but he refuses to let himself cry in fear in front of the enemy. Never again. The other villain hadn't even blinked at the disappearance of his own limb, and pink flesh bubbled and formed back into the shape of a muscle-heavy arm covered in pure black skin. Izuku hadn't really seen it before, but that villain. Their stare was vacant, almost milky. And their brain was visible, almost making the boy GG. The 2 teachers, Izuku wasn't suicidal, he wouldn't fight alone, are too occupied with the mass of villains coming at them to help him, so he needs to make sure he stalls long enough for at least Eraserhead to get here. Why didn't this seem to have murderous intense L last time? He forces his gaze away from the bulky monster. The man pulls him closer to examine his face, or at least that's what it seems like, but Izuku can't be sure with this. Hand on the guy's face. I thought I'd seen you somewhere. You're the student that hates Nizu. Okay. That poster did not express anything as strong as hate, but he's not exactly wrong, so Izuku does not correct him. I didn't expect you to have such an OP quirk. It's not that powerful. Is that what they told you? I don't think you're like those NPCs. The man grabs Izuku's other arm and he can't help but look around for his teachers. Damn it, they're still not anywhere closer to being done. Krusty's face is uncomfortably close, scrutinizing every single details of his face, the fluffiness of his hair and the green of his eyes with a tiny spot of pink in the middle that makes the green jump out that much more. You're powerful and you don't seem that attached to heroes. You'd make a great villain if you joined us. Izuku freezes, but his brain does not. This man had said he'd make a great villain. Astro Kinesis was a quirk that had the potential to destroy planets so easily he might not even need to be conscious for that, and it already did hurt people. Floating garbage and empty houses haunt him today still, and he's perfectly conscious he could be the worst villain that has and would ever exist, could make mankind extinct in the blink of an eye. That's why he wasn't sent to a military school or private tutoring. He was sent to a hero school to make sure he would be an asset and not a danger to society. I'm not a villain. I'll never be a villain. He shakes his arm harder, pulls more aggressively, looks less and less like a hero in training fighting against a villain and more like a cornered animal calling on to its survival instincts. The man is almost snorting, his hand not letting up, and what he says next leaves Izuku gaping in shock, horror because he's right, oh god he's right. If he ever cracked under the mental strain, snapped, just decided that things would be so much easier if he just KILEDMNRAT, and he knows he's come too close too many times to count despite being only a few weeks into the school year, and if he ever listened to those thoughts, then you don't choose to be a villain. You become one because it's the only path left for you. Panic overtakes him. He's sweating bullets. He doesn't want to be a villain. Tiles crack all around, broken under the pressure from two different forces applied to them from the will to save himself, get rid of the villains, take them down against the need for control, don't use your quirk, leave things where they are. Dust raises, clouds around the two, and the villain sees a vision he truly believes is the future sensei has prepared him for. In front of him is the UA student, with a dark look that contrasts with the pink light that emanates from his pupils, shines upon his cheeks and even the dust, his hair messy and dusty. The figure, despite its fear and denial, he'll come around surely, emanates an ominous aura with a promise Tamura hadn't known he'd been looking for. A rare item? No, more like a legendary weapon, already inclined towards darkness. Tamura doesn't know what that rat did, but it turned out in his favor, and all he had to do was up his charisma for it to fall right in his hands. Kurogiri appears at his side once again. Shigaraki Tamura. Both 13 and Eraserhead have been incapacitated. Sensei can make use of them. Take us back to the bar. We obtained quite a few assets today. Incapacitated? Assets? No F dash. They're going to take them. A warp gate appears to his side from which the unconscious bodies of his teachers fall to his feet, and then another portal appears right beneath. Everything is in slow motion. Just as he felt the release of his pained wrist, the tiles of the USJ Plaza disappeared and were replaced by a room with round tables, chairs, and wooden parquet. He doesn't really have the time to register everything. He didn't evacuate his teachers, and now they were both at the mercy of the Hand's villain. If he didn't do anything, the three of them would end up dead, maybe even worse. Nizu had told him of worst fates that could have found him were he not claimed by UA. Without thinking, he pulls on the floor planks in the usual pink glow, but also on the two heroes that are falling through at his side. The warp gate is still wide open, up to his torso, and Izuku grabs onto the opportunity, his legs slamming painfully against the flying wood planks. When the three of them fly out of the gate, only then can Izuku breathe a sigh of relief. The villains are encircling them three, and the mist man attempts to take them away again, but Izuku rips tiles out of the floor and takes himself and the other two heroes up in the air. Numo, get that kid back. The black mass jumps in their direction but stops very suddenly in the air before getting slammed into the ground. Izuku applies pressure on every side he can, making sure that even with his struggling the beast can't escape his grasp. Every other villain are forced into a tight mass, unable to move under the intensity of the teen's power. At the front of the group remains the blue-haired villain with a gleam in his one visible eye. Amazing, you even took down our anti-symbol of peace. You really are destined for greatness. What? The man takes his chance, uses the split second in which the teen released him in shock, and is already halfway through a portal, along with Kurogiri when Izuku realizes what's happening. I don't care if we lost this time. You'll be ours soon enough, little star. Izuku can't help but shiver at the obvious reference to his space-themed costume. See you then. As soon as the gate is gone, the doors to the USJ slam open with a call of, I am here. But the fight is already over, and all that remains are the villains already under Izuku's control. He wishes he could let go right away, the pink light slightly visible through his closed eyelids and his hands holding on to his homeroom teacher's scarf like a lifeline. But he holds on until finally the heroes are here to take them away. When the villains are finally detained, and he's in an ambulance, alongside the beat-up man, it's only then that he lets go, both of his quirk and of the growing mixture of fear, anxiety, exhaustion, and so many other feelings in his chest as he sobs into his barely conscious teacher's reassuring arms. Principal, we would like to investigate every corner of the school just in case. It could be possible that villains may remain. Nizu had a lot of esteem for Detective Tsukachi, well, as much as he can have towards one of those humans. The man did a good job in general, which would usually be considered a good thing, but right now this could go very, very badly for Nizu. Of course, the government would protect him as long as the story was away from the public, considering the power Astro Kinesis would bring Japan in the long run and the price he had paid them for the acquisition of Midorya Izuku. But Tsukachi was a man of true justice. The kind that would not hesitate to throw his job away and fight the government itself if he could prevent such a blatant abuse of the laws and human rights. He could become a terribly fierce enemy if he started now, especially considering his lie-detecting quirk. Already, some of his staff was fighting him, and with the USJ incident he couldn't permit more blows to UA so soon. In time, he'd let the boy free, but right now would not be ideal. Of course, he said in a joyful tone. Some people might complain, but you police have more authority. Investigating is what you're good at. There he goes. However, we have a few residents on campus. For the sake of privacy, would it be a problem if the heroes of UA could take care of our private woods? If there are residents, then I suppose it can be arranged. Thank you. We'll be counting on you. The man leaves to command his team, and Nizu mentally gives himself a pat on the back. That was one problem avoided. Don't you go ahead without me, nerd. Bakugu? The greenette stops right at the entrance of the woods where his residence is hidden, waiting for the blonde to catch up. Izuku is barely standing at this point, the disgust from how that man had tried to tempt him with such an easier life making him want to hide in a cave and never come out. He wasn't a villain. He wasn't. He was honestly terrified. Especially since that kind of person had managed to infiltrate UA, how long until he turned to desperate measures? The place that had forcibly taken him from home under the pretense that it was for protection from villains. Great FING job. Katsuki catches up, but doesn't stop and keeps walking in the direction of the small building. You better have some good shit in your fridge or I ain't spending the night again, dipshit. What? Izuku is FING confused, but he follows the boy and they enter his jail cell. Or Bakugu invites himself in and just barges through every room until he finds the bedroom. He snickers, still a king nerd, at the sight of all the All Might memorabilia, and starts emptying his bag on the bed to Izuku's utter confusion. What are you doing? Taking out my sheet, obviously. Are you effing blind? Izuku is so effing tired he literally can't make sense of what Bakugu is saying and he's just staring blankly. I'm crashing for the night, idiot. What? Did something happen? Did you get into a fight with your parents? That's terrible. You should dash. It's not that, moron. The blonde sighs, passing a hand through his hair, and Izuku is not sure what is going on with him. You said being alone was making you insane. And with that dumb quirk we can't afford having you go crazy on our butt. So there, now you're not alone. The excuse is as flimsy to Izuku as it is to Katsuki, and despite his lingering hate for the blonde and all that he did in the past, Izuku can't help but smile fondly. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. That night, it's as though the 10 years between the diagnosis and now have never existed and the two were friends the same as back then. They watched an All Might movie while eating curry buns, made a dent in the candy stash, provisioned by Recovery Girl, which they very much regretted when they were still awake at 7 in the morning, and they did a pillow fight which ended up being a one-sided bloodbath because what kind of idiot hits someone who has telekinesis using a pillow and expects to come out alive? Eventually, around 8 in the morning, thank God classes had been cancelled for today, the two lay down on Izuku's bed. The greenette feels much better. Well, apart from being so exhausted he'll most likely pass out sooner or later. So, what the happened once you literally threw us out? There goes his improved mood. With everything going on, do you think I'll become a villain one day? Izuku falls asleep not long after their conversation ends. Katsuki doesn't. Yukiyama Rei is a beautiful woman of glimmering silver hair and a face that does not tarnish despite the growing number of wrinkles that mark her skin with age. She likes to think of herself as kind and hopefully not vain despite acknowledging that she wasn't so hard on the eyes. After all, that man didn't breed her just for her quirk. She was also very conscious of her terribly childish side. Sue her, she was a sheltered child and even more sheltered wife. It didn't stop her from trying to be the best mother possible and to save her children, hers, never his, from the monster. She failed, and 10 years after having snapped and attacked her own child, her baby Shudo, she was still here imprisoned in Mizudafu's special psychiatric ward made just for those we paid for the public not to know about. Endeavor was still paying after so long, so there wasn't much she could do about it. Today, Fuyumi didn't have time to come visit, and so that left her with nothing to pass the time. The pile of books on her nightstand was mocking her boredom, and if she had to read about Count Olaf being to the Baudelaire kids one more time, she would have to incinerate those books. Of course, there are no fire-making tools in a hospital room, but never underestimate the drive of a bored Yukiyama Rei. Although, considering the hospital staff would most likely not be happy about her committing arson, she decided maybe it wasn't such a good idea and instead took the books to hopefully find someone willing to trade reading material with her. Or at least that was the plan. She had barely walked out of her room when her eyes met the empty emerald ones of a tiny woman, or, well, smaller than her. The woman didn't acknowledge her in the least, seeming in a daze as she followed a nurse into the room next door, but Rei took no offense. She didn't know if it was the empty gaze, the dullness of otherwise very colorful green, or the lack of a sound that was so similar in its absence to how she herself had been silent upon arrival when Enji sent her here, but one thing was for sure. She's befriending that lady. The door closed behind her and Rei allowed herself to relax, sighing in relief when she confirmed that she hadn't been seen. Normally they weren't supposed to leave their rooms for dinner, but their rules. She's been here for 10 years, rules basically don't apply to her too, you're only in trouble if you get caught. Her new neighbor's room, Midorya Izuku, she had read on the door's plaquette, was bare from any decoration, understandable considering she moved in only a few hours prior, the only proof of someone living here being the bag of belongings in a corner and the shell of a person holding one of the platters they brought for meals without touching any of the food. Rei knew she shouldn't be here. She was overstepping and risked causing distress to the woman. But the uncanny similarity. It compelled her to act, to not leave that person alone in whatever she were going through. She knew how haunting and lonely it was, all on her own to tear down the terrible thoughts that had plagued after she had. She wouldn't leave someone else to deal with this alone. There's only so much doctors and nurses can do when you barely have any other human contact. With this thought in mind, she pushed through the apprehension and approached the woman, praying every deity that she wasn't going to F anything up. Hello Midorya-san. I saw your son in the newspaper. She barges into the room uninvited, as is usual these past weeks, albeit this time with a newspaper unfolded before her, and takes a seat next to her friend. She thinks they are? Oh God, what if they aren't? At least I think it's your son? His name is Midorya and he looks a lot like you. She holds up the picture on the front page to compare with Inko's face only to have it ripped out of her hand. Midorya-san? She says in disbelief. It wasn't so much the rudeness of the act that surprised her, but that for the first time since her arrival, Inko wasn't moving sluggishly or looking around in a daze. In fact, she seemed more awake than ever before and fully pumped with energy, ready to explode in what Rei wasn't sure whether it was anger, tears, or a mix of both. The emerald-eyed lady tightens her grip on the paper, creasing it between her fingers turned white from the strain. Her teeth audibly gritted, only separating enough for a few words to come out, but it's more than enough, too much, her pained heart supplies, to connect all of the tiny dots that she had found along the way, enough to realize that an empty gaze and a place in a mental hospital wasn't the only thing these two mothers shared. They stole him for his quirk. She hears the furious, tearful whisper as Inko stares at the fake, crooked, nervous, horribly wrong smile of the boy with green curls and pink hairpins, and she can only hug the woman as she cries herself to sleep. Everything is going to be dash. Great, Inko-san. Fuyumi managed to sneak us some snacks and we've got permission to move my pillows and blankets to your room to watch the sports festival as comfortably as possible. I'm so excited we're going to see our babies. She excitedly throws herself on the bed along with said snacks and pillows to the amusement of Inko. You shouldn't go overboard with the snacks though. You'll get a stomach ache. No pain, no gain. She snickers when Inko voices her doubts at the expression's correct appliance. There's still a little time until the festival starts, so the two use it to put everything in its place, hiding the food under a pillow just in case and moving the bed so that the length is facing the TV screen. What's this? Rei pointed at the green cloth Inko took out of her bag, unfolding it to reveal the shape of a jumpsuit as an answer. A hero costume? Actually, it's Izuku's. I wanted to give it to him on the day he'd leave for UA. But then he told me what was really going on and I just shut down. She wipes the tears threatening to fall with the back of her hand and cradles the jumpsuit as if it were woven with the most precious of threads. I did something unforgivable, leaving him to deal on his own when all he wanted was to spend his last few days of freedom with me. It's not much, and certainly not forgiveness material. But if I can support him from here, watch him during the festival and keep this close to me she holds up the cloth for emphasis, then it's at the very least a first step in becoming a better mother to him. In being here for him. She smiles not unkindly, and Rei can't help but feel the contagion, curving her lips in turn and feeling the warmth of the small medallion containing pictures of her children underneath her shirt. Suddenly, whatever publicity was playing on the screen is replaced with the loud voice of Present Mike and the two scramble for the bed, not wanting to miss a single second of their children's screen time. The very loud presentator screams in his mic despite having a voice-enhancing quirk, most likely deafening any spectators close to the commentating booth. The man does a similar introduction as is usual for UA's sports festival except for Class 1A where the cameras zoom in on a freckled face that has Inko screaming proudly, "That's my baby," and introduce him as the star of the hero course, thanks to his exploit in the USJ and his notoriety as the Meteor Incident Kid. There's no question that the crowd is screaming right now, excited to see how he'll perform. As the cameras zoom back out, Rei excitedly points out a red and white-haired boy and Inko curses the fact he was barely visible right now. The referee is introduced as UA's homeroom teacher and he looks like he wants to be here as much as Inko wants to be in this hospital. Now is the moment they'll announce the first year's representative, but Inko barely registers her son walking on stage as someone yells right outside her door. "You were told to leave the premises." Security has already been dash. A yelp of pain turned into a scream cuts the sentence short and the two stay still, paralyzed in fear. After only a second but what seems like an eternity, the door opens, Izuku's voice a muffled noise in the background, as a scrawny man with pale blue hair and a hand for a mask walks in like he owns the place, a bleeding nurse scrambling away and leaving the two women to fend for themselves. The villains, if he's not a villain then Inko's ex-husband isn't an a-hole, barely visible red eyes stop on the plump woman before smiling, the corners of his mouth pulling on flaky dried skin. "Midorya Inko, right? The heroes sure made it hard to find you." He extends his arms and speaks as if he expected his words to be in future history textbooks and studied as the best DMN speech in Quirk history there ever was. "We're here to free you from their grasp." Inko barely has time to register the drop in temperature before all she can see is ice. This was it. Their masterpiece. Their 16 chapel. The pinnacle of their brick-building careers. Recovery Girl placed her own blue Lego brick at the last uncovered spot of the desk while Izuku placed his last yellow piece on the floor in the very last empty spot in front of the door, on his knees with his tongue out in concentration. This was it. Their work was now complete. The two shared a satisfied grin and left the office with a spring in their steps after taking a selfie together, tired but with pride inflating their chests. Half an hour later, Nizu had finished his conversation with All Might in the teacher's lounge and was on his way back to his office. To be honest, he could very well understand the hero's wish to make Midoriya his heir. He has shown an extremely powerful and versatile non-lethal use of his quirk and proved his heroic features were plentiful by prioritizing the safety of his classmates during the USJ incident. On top of it all, the boy was gaining quite a flattering image and was well on his way of becoming a child celebrity and top hero. Making him the official heir of the symbol of peace would make him much more popular, and much more famous, perhaps even one of the biggest and well-loved worldwide hero celebrity. It would be an incredibly useful asset to his own plans and Nizu would have eagerly pushed the child All Might's way. However, Midorya did not have as good of a control on his quirk as it seemed. His extracurricular quirk training proved to be slow progress, and adding one for all at this time would only make the situation worse. He couldn't risk the planet just for the sake of all might. Midorya was good, but not perfect for one for all. He opened the door to his office and stepped in, mildly impressed by what met his eyes. His entire office had been covered in Lego bricks, including the furniture and every single item as well as the lights and the walls. It was flawless, and it must have taken all night and morning. Perhaps, just maybe, he should not write Midorya off right away, he thought, pulling out his progress file on the teen out of the Lego-covered desk, just a little bit sad that he had to break off the construction to open it. Time and patience, the boy could do big things, and Nizu's doubts that he would eventually find control of his quirk and could potentially tame the strength of All Might found themselves subdued. Perhaps, not now but not so far in the future, when Astro Kinesis was close to being mastered, Nizu should let him approach the child. The rat chuckled to himself. If Midorya spent the whole night in here, then the poor boy must be barely standing on his feet right now. Uraraka, do you think you could send me into the sun? Izuku's classmates glanced, amused at how he slumped on his desk looking like a candle melting on the surface. You have your quirk, do it yourself. I'm not getting charged for murder this early in the year, she snickered, patting his curly hair in fake consolation. Please refrain from murdering anyone ever, Uraraka-kun. And please sit properly, Midorya. This is disrespectful towards UA and the funds they put into appropriately furnishing our classrooms and thus creating the ideal educational environment. The greenette just turns his face towards the side, revealing the larger-than-usual purple bags and glaring into the empty space between his two friends, mumbling something akin to, maybe they have a little too much funding, before digging his face back in between his arms, mood soured a little by the small thought. And the Legos had helped so much with relaxing. He guessed he and Bakugo made a pair, looking very much not in a good mood and very much like zombies. Which, to be fair, had been that way for Izuku since he moved in. Although, Izuku had to wonder why Bakugo looked more pissy than usual. He had truly appreciated the gesture of staying with him the other day, and he thought they both had a lot of fun despite their past and the USJ. But maybe he'd been pretending out of pity. Pity? Bakugo? He's no Bakugo since he was out of the womb and never witnessed anything remotely similar to pity in that guy. Maybe, just maybe, could be. That's the dumbest sheet to ever go through your head, Midorya. Think that way and you'll only get hurt. He clenched his fist and decided, if he's going to have a bad day, at least he won't let it be because of his own thoughts. There were more than enough bad day factors around him without bringing his own dish to the buffet. He straightened out suddenly and slapped his own face, startling Uraraka and Tokoyami, whose feathers puffed up hilariously with Kaminari not even bothering to hide his laughing, and shocking a very concerned Ito, wondering why the hell did his friend slap himself. I'm good. I'm FNG ready. I'll fight against Hirex, I don't give a f dashed. I'm both very amused and very concerned. Mentioned a very amused but very concerned Shinso. Hey everyone. Did you see? It came out this morning. Mina slammed the door open, Ida looking very indignated at the blatant disrespect of the door, the school that paid for the door, the pro-heroes that once used the door and the manufacturers of the door, and voicing that indignation only to go completely ignored to the amusement of Izuku, who was pretty sure the door was not, in fact, manufactured. The pink bubble of excitement slammed a newspaper in front of Izuku, flattening it so that the picture and text could be seen better. That was him. He remembered they let in just a few reporters so the public wouldn't make baseless assumptions. He had done his best not to let his smile drop until he was alongside Aizawa in the ambulance, his pupils still pink from holding down the villains. He even added a small peace sign as a show that, hey, it's okay, we got it. His expression dropped, which Izuku only realized when Bakugo gave him a discreet but painful kick to the knee underneath the table. Not sure if he did it to be helpful or just to be a D-dash, but Izuku didn't care. Ma might see his picture, he thought absent-mindedly. She'd definitely see right through it. Had she realized how truly dangerous he was? Was that the real reason she shut down? Did she think he was? Jesus, Midorya, You stopped 72 villains? Are you a monster or dash? I'm not. He just yelled. Just as stunned as his classmates by the outburst, he stood there. When did he stand? Slowly coming to the realization that his hands hurt quite a lot from hitting the desk, staring at his red palms in a daze. Sorry, Kaminari. I didn't mean to do that. The poor blonde was gaping before seeming to come back to his senses. It's fine, dude. Just didn't expect that, he reassured. Yeah, I might, still be a little tense from USJ. Sorry about that. The green curls bobbed as Izuku sat back down and handed back the newspaper to his worried pink classmate. I told you it's cool, little dude. Izuku squawked in offense, instantly destroying the tense atmosphere. Hey, I'm not little, I'm fun-sized. Pint-sized, Siro fake coughed. Stop antagonizing him. Shinso almost seemed to defend him before adding with a smirk, that tall piece of sheet, that's dangerous. Haven't you heard tiny people are closer to hell? Shinso, I will telekinesis your tongue into your own throat, you giant son of a beach. Is that because you're too small to grab it yourself? Before Izuku could fully climb on a table to strangle Shinso, since he was too small to do so otherwise, Aizawa thankfully made his entrance, one arm still sitting in a sling but otherwise much less harmed than prior to Recovery Girl's intervention. Izuku was incredibly relieved his F-up didn't result in his teachers terribly wounded, although he remained a little worried about 13's painful lacerations. He couldn't imagine how things would have ended had that thing made with all might in mind attacked them. Midorya, get down. It's too early for your nonsense. All of you, get in your seats before I expel someone. Unsurprisingly, everyone scrambled for their seats. The intimidating man looks over all of his students, his eyes lingering on the greenette who was very embarrassed by having broken down in front of his teacher the last time they saw each other, before starting class with an announcement. The fight isn't over yet. Izuku freezes. He couldn't mean. The sports festival is drawing near. Oh, thank F-, so that's what he meant. Be more careful with your wording, Caterpillar Man. That's a super normal school event. Wait a sec. Kaminari cut in. Is it really a good idea to do that right after a villain attack? Yeah. They couldn't really do much, but they did manage to get in. What if they attack again? Jairu added. Then they'd be met with UA's 5-fold security increase. To be honest, Sho Yuta completely understood the students' point of view. There would definitely have been much more damage were it not for Midorya, and they also owed the lack of bad repercussions on the media side to the class pain in the butt. Were it not for his efficient evacuation and his subduing of the villains, not only would they have lost a serious amount of credibility as the top hero school, but Sho Yuta could not guarantee that everyone would have made it out alive either. Holding the event is a way for UA to show such an attack is not enough to waver our resolve. He explains. On top of that, the festival is an opportunity that you cannot afford to miss as heroic students with internships fast approaching. It's not an event to be cancelled over a few villains. After a full explanation of the festival and its purpose, class was dismissed for lunch. A dark aura enveloped a corner of the class where two students stood, the smaller one propped against the wall watching his other classmates with a menacing glint in his eyes and an eerie smile stretching his lips, the other one fists tight and a determined look on her face. Everyone, let's do our best at the sports festival. Uraraka. Midorya. Your faces are. You're scaring the children, Ribbit. Don't worry, Tokoyami. I'll protect you. Shinso says while the poor burb attempts to push him off his back to no avail, sighing in defeat. Who are you calling a child? You guys really are fired up, aren't you? Oh yes. Izuku looped his arm around Uraraka's, a fist punching the empty air. Uraraka, let us depart. To the drag dealer. Please stop referring to Recovery Girl as your drag dealer. Never. The trio departs for Izuku's usual midday shot, Ida lightly scolding his giggling friends. I just realized, but wasn't Midorya on quirk suppressants during the USJ incident? Sata points out. A pair of heterochromatic eyes widen. The recovery lady is here for your safety. Don't cry now, it's Recovery Gal. After twirling on himself, he puts a hand on a strut-out hip, lifts a foot and raises a hand in front of his shoulder as if he were propping a cane over it, mimicking Recovery Girl's most famous entrance pose back in her youth. A splutter and the smell of iron on top of the old nurse's laugh makes the boy whip his head towards the noise, and he instantly flushes in embarrassment, realizing his friends and Recovery Girl were not the only witness to his dance. He gulps down before he can say something he shouldn't in front of Ida and Uraraka. Hasten. I didn't expect to see you here, He pushes out while not very subtly hiding himself behind Ida, whose lips are quirking upward. The blonde skeleton can't help a hearty chuckle, wiping the blood from his chin. It's good to see you appreciate your nurse, young Midorya. The poor boy groans, hiding his burning face between his hands. Kill me. Please. Do you know him, Midori-kun? He turns back towards the gravity-defying girl, slightly peeking from in between his fingers. He was there when I found out my quirk. Izuku's idol holds out a hand in greetings. My name is Yagi Tashinori. I work as a secretary to All Might. It's very nice to meet you, young Ida, young Uraraka. The bubbly girl responds with enthusiasm while Ida raises an inquiring eyebrow. How do you know our names? The greenette chokes. Why, young Midoriya has told me quite a few things about you, so I merely assumed. Oh, I see. Excuse my rudeness. It is an honor to meet you, Yagi-san. Wow, Izuku thought. He took the bait. So there is a god. May I ask why you are visiting the nurse's office, young Midoriya? You're not hurt, are you? No, not at all. God, Izuku, calm the F down. It's only All Might, your idol since you learned the word hero, and the number 1 hero and the symbol of peace, and he man whose secret you were trusted to keep, and yeah, okay, there was absolutely no reason to not freak out because he just embarrassed himself in front of the man. Thankfully, Recovery Girl, who may not be his grandma, but Diamond might as well be, steps in to save his flustered butt. Midoriya here needs to take his daily quirk suppressants. If you could vacate my office so we could proceed with that, I'd be grateful. And for God's sake, take better care of yourself or I'll finish you myself. She ends with a whack of her syringe-shaped cane over his head, Izuku squawking from seeing his childhood idol get beat by his basically grandma. The man is clearly struggling not to laugh at the poor student's outraged face and his friend's confusion over the entire situation, and he makes his way out, not even bothered by the dull pain of the cane making contact with his cranium. I see. Well, I won't bother you any longer. I have much work to do, but I do hope to be able to speak with you soon, young Midoriya. Alright. See you later, racing. A both embarrassing and embarrassed whine left the teen as he flopped miserably on the bed where their teacher had previously sat, holding an arm out with the inner elbow side up so the chuckling Recovery Girl could attend to her business. The cold feeling of the disinfectant doesn't bother him, but the heat in his cheeks sure does. I can't believe he saw me do thaw. He fakes cry into the white sheets. Don't worry about it, Midori-kun. It wasn't that bad. Yes, I like to believe it was a very well-executed dance. I can find you my old costume if you'd like, Midoriya. Recovery adds in the smuggest tone Izuku has ever heard in his life. First off, it's a tragedy. That guy is like at least third the reason I want to be a hero. Second, thank you, Ida. I trained very hard to perfect it. Third, bring the goods Wednesday afternoon, I'll bring the camera. He counts off with the hand that's not attached to his arm in which a needle is being plunged. Obviously, his friends completely ignore his attempt at humor. Well, half attempt, really. He thinks his innocent reputation might benefit from a cute video on YouTube. I see, so you must be holding him in very high estimate. It's no wonder your face got so red. Why must you add to the pain? He says just as the empty syringe pulls out. The ever-so-kind nurse pats his leg once she's done cleaning everything off, handing him a few candies that he chews on, pouting slightly before sending him out. An elbow to the ribs has him almost choking as a candy slips down his throat unexpectedly fast, a few students looking his way before going on with their lives. So what's the other part? Cough cough, the other cough part? I believe Uraraka may be referring to the reason you chose to become a hero. I'm rather curious myself, since you mentioned Yagi-san was part of it. His face gets redder even than earlier, his freckles popping out, which has Ochako internally squealing at how cute he can be despite how he sometimes acts, and he turns his face away sheepishly, a hand running down the back of his neck. Oh, I actually wrote it in my speech for the festival, so. You want to keep it to yourself until then? That if you don't mind? Nonsense. A large hand slams on Izuku's shoulder, making the small boy stumble before Uraraka catches him. It is your choice whether and when to reveal the source of your inspiration. That's right. We wouldn't pressure you into it, even if you weren't doing it during the brunette frowns in silence, then her mouth opens in a "oh," as if reaching an epiphany. Oh yeah, I keep forgetting you're the first place. I thought it was weird you had to make a speech, but now that I remember it makes more sense. Anyway, what I wanted to say was, if you don't want to, don't do it. She emphasizes her point by hitting a fist into her open palm. It's as simple as that. And if we try to force you, then we don't deserve to be your friends. She is met with silence and a stunned face. Suddenly, the boy pulls a hand towards his face, hiding it from view as he starts laughing. At first, Ochako isn't really sure of what to do. She didn't expect such a reaction at all. But then his laugh fades into a shuddering breath accompanied by trembling sniffles, and before she or Tenya can do anything about it, they don't need to anymore because their friend launches himself at them, hugging them in an almost crushing grip and smiling wide through his tears. You guys are the best. His voice comes muffled by Tenya's uniform vest, which is getting heavily tear-stained, but it doesn't really matter to him right now. The taller of the boys slowly lowers his arms in an awkward response to the sudden sprout of affection, which Ochako finds very amusing and doesn't hesitate to show by giggling before herself answering very enthusiastically to the hug. The three of them are laughing in the corridor, looking completely crazy to everyone else, but they don't really care, even Tenya, who would normally have chastised anyone loitering in the corridors and is instead committing that very crime. Finally they separate. Maybe I should have warned you before, but I'm a bit of a crybaby, he says as he wipes the last of the tear tracks. We would have found out eventually. Izuku giggles again, and it's a very nice sound to their ears. Up to this day, Ochako saw Midorya mostly as a prankster who lucked out in terms of quirk and grades. Someone who was fun to be around and most likely not very serious in general, although still a nice person. Tenya, however, saw someone that was far above them. Someone that would find himself breezing through UA and attaining the top ranks in record time, someone that could afford to take the time to make his classmates laugh. To hear this light, soothing, relieved laugh made them realize how fake and heavy the usual snickers and giggles they heard in class was. Seeing him cry and laugh and show so much happiness and affection at Uraraka's words made them see him in a new light. A little less of a jokester, a little less of an unattainable pillar, and a lot more of who he really was under those silly pranks and these incredible feats. It was nice to meet Midorya Izuku. Of course, their empty stomachs had to go and ruin the atmosphere. God damn it, every single time, the greenette grumbled. So, should we head for the cafeteria? The trio smiles. Let's. Izuku feels happy? No, that word seems too small to describe this feeling. He's rarely felt so good. It's a feeling that holds a promise. A promise that no, it's not a dream, he really does have friends, and there's noone as great in this world, except his mom, because no one beats his mom, not even All Might. They care for him, they're giving and expecting nothing but his own friendship in exchange. He'd never known that before. People here are different. Maybe UA was a prison to him, but after that? It didn't feel as much like it. He was positively glowing, and his classmates could definitely tell so. The lack of pranks was a dead giveaway. Did something happen to make you so happy, Midorya? Ribbit? The boy giggles. He fuckingiggle. Note that. Only Bakuida and Uraraka had the pleasure to hear this prior to that moment, and one of those three had not in a long time, not like he usually does before a prank, but in a childishly innocent way, shining a 10 million watt smile at his amphibian classmate, before answering in a way so precious, so innocent that no one ever thought that prankster, pain in the butt, class clown Midorya would ever be the one to say those words exactly. It's just that I realized I have the best friends in the world. There's a splutter and a squeal of embarrassment as well as a cackle from Bakugo, who finds their reactions hilarious. You can't just say that, Midorya. A red-faced Uraraka squeaks while Ida wisely remains silent, opting to hide his warming cheeks behind a textbook. Shinso just looks at him and snickers, showing him he wasn't very subtle about it. A third of the class coos, another loses their sheet over how precious Midorya was being, and the last just doesn't give a flying F-. Present Mike should have known the day Midorya didn't pull some sheet in his class was the same day the rest of his classmates just wouldn't stay in place. Anywho, Izuku was in top form, over the moon, okay? He did slightly cringe at that particular expression, charged to full battery. He was DMN ready for quirk training with the rat. Today was a good day, so today would be the day he'd make progress. He was sure of it. So it's with a huge confident smile and his back straight that he heads for the classroom's door, not even feeling the weight of his yellow backpack full to the brim with notebooks. Except there was a tiny problem. Excuse me, what business do you have with Class A? They're scouting out the enemy. Deku's the one who stopped those villains, so they want to find more about his quirk for the festival. And right we do, a voice yells in the back. The target of the attention squeaks, but, I'm sorry, but it really won't be of any use to you. You think you're so special, don't you? A blonde at the front spits. Izuku stops smiling. What? I'm telling you, knowing my quirk won't help you because . Oh wow, okay. Izuku is getting some very unpleasant flashbacks from that guy invading his space with a mob surrounding them. He can feel the confidence flowing out of him like water from an upside-down, uncapped bottle, and feels the stress and anxiety pump in his veins like a train at full speed. Oh, so you think you're so good there's no way anyone can beat you? You're really that conceited? And no, it's just that and I'm not . I bet you felt real nice about yourself for beating those villains. They sure made you look good, didn't they? Izuku is stunned silent, and not in the same way he was with his friends earlier. He feels dizzy, like the world is swirling around him. The moment he realized the villains wanted to take 13 and Aizawa replays in his mind, burned into his brain for the rest of his life. Everyone and their mother realizes how bad the guy fed up except said guy. Well, my name is Minoma Nito from Class 1B next door, and trust me when I say that . How could you? The usually sassy and joking voice is replaced by a croaking, unsure one. How could you think I felt anything but horrible? Oh no. He's crying. Do you really think being a hero is about making a spectacle of yourself? About looking cool and pretty for the cameras? You're no better than . He bites his tongue until he tastes blood. He doesn't want to be here. He doesn't want to. Deku! Someone screams as he jumps out the window to avoid the mob. He must have scared Bakugo. He doesn't slow down though, using Astro Kinesis on his shoes to soften the landing and taking off like a rocket to UA's private woods, his very own personal jail cell. There, he speeds into the kitchen they supplied, to give him a semblance of home, taking the sharpest knife he could find and as many towels, dishcloths and rags he can find. He touches and prods at his back until he can find the small bump he's looking for. You're not following me out, B? He takes the knife and starts cutting. Do? They all gasp as their classmate disappears through the window, but Bakugo screams the nickname. He's okay. Soy sauce reports, looking down at the green form running off. I'm going after him. They make the shitty extras piss us off. Katsuki pushes past the mob, not caring if he hurts anyone. It's their own DMN fault anyway. It seems like the nerd's shitty friends are trying and failing to follow him thanks to that crowd. Tough for them, he's the only one who knows where Deku went. Left behind, the rest of 1A advances menacingly towards the mob, except the 4 that have left and Todoroki, who's just standing back awkwardly. I bet you feel real nice about yourself for harassing Midorya like that. Shinso cuts through the tension like a hot knife in butter. It sure made you look good, didn't it? He takes one more step towards the crowd and they scatter like All Might himself promised to Texas smash them to Mars. Which is to say very fast and with a little bit of terrorized screaming. Shinso really hopes Midorya is alright. He's worried for the little guy. There's blood everywhere. On the couch, on the rags, on the floor, on Deku. Deku is scrubbing blindly at his own naked back with a knife. He's crying and whining in pain, but he still keeps going as best as he can, cutting red strips onto his own skin, making more blood leak from his raw, bloodied back onto the white cushions of the couch. The smell of iron is everywhere, added to the vision and Katsuki Jius. This is a nightmare, right? There's no way this is happening, right? Deku's not here, in a jail cell the shape of a house, taken away from his mother and mutilating himself. That right? The knife goes flying at the still unnoticed Katsuki, splattering a little blood on his shoes, and he never thought he'd wish the nerd kept using the knife because after a yell of frustration, the green boy's bloody hands went back to where the knife had been working and he starts digging into the flesh with his own nails. It's only now that Deku notices the company, when Katsuki can't hold it in anymore and throws up. Chio was on the warpath. She thought she was sad when she learned how their dorming student was acquired from the now no longer teaching Midnight. She thought she was sad when she first met said student and the boy was obviously dead on his feet and eyes red from crying. She thought she was sad when she learned anyone who asked, "Where's the mother?" was told she was separated from her son for being abusive despite Chio knowing full well that this was a lie. But right now? Her lab coat covered in the blood of the poor child? Knowing how said blood got here from the panicked Bakugu and panicked in the same sentence was a huge red flag? She thought she was sad at first, but right now? She is livid. The tiny woman of pure concentrated rage makes her way through the corridors, not caring that the few lingering students saw her covered in blood with her syringe propped on the shoulder, and oh no, not the cane one. This one has a much smaller container part and a much longer needle. A sword, and headed straight for the no longer Lego-clad office that served as the piece of Sheet's lair. You! She slams the door open with a kick, most likely breaking the lock and handle as well, but she has not a single remaining F to give. Aizawa is here, probably had been talking about something with the furry fucker and immediately stands to prevent any violence from occurring but steps back instinctively when the old lady snarls at him. She slams the blade of her syringe straight in the middle of the desk, which splits and falls, half on each side of the rat, sending papers sprawling across the floor as well. My recovery-san, you seem in an awful mood. Does it have to do with the current color of your coat? The piece of garbage dares to joke. You, how could you do this to Midorya? The rat raised a figurative eyebrow. Did something happen to Midorya again? Did something happen to Dash? Did something happen to Midorya? I'll tell you what happened, you horrible, vicious monster. Midorya tried to pull out the tracker you planted on him, and he cut himself like a piece of meat to do so. She points the tip of the sword straight at his face. Aizawa visibly pales. Midorya did what? I see. That is problematic. I suppose it explains the blood. He didn't even try denying the accusation. You planted a tracker on Midorya? Well, I had to take some precautions on top of our hostage to ensure he wouldn't escape. That would be a waste of money, wouldn't it? A hostage? Escape? What are you even talking about? What would he even be escaping from? Aizawa remembers the strange interaction between the teen and the principal during the entrance exam, the story of how Midorya pulled multiple meteorites to Earth, how he sent all of the exam robots to space, the way he dragged himself to classes, the purple bags under his eyes that had not been present on the pictures of the meteor incident, the casual dissing of Nizu, the goddamn 72 villains he immobilized, all at the same time, showing heroic, powerful, desirable. Quirk. You didn't. Please, tell me you didn't kidnap Midorya Izuku. I did not. Nizu answers truthfully, albeit with a strange glint in his eyes, as though this outrage was something he was welcoming, something that he had planned for. Shoyuta wants to sigh in relief. He has never been so happy his instincts were proved wrong. I bought him. You disgusting piece of rot. His eyes glow red in an instinctive activation of his quirk, the white capture weapon that usually rests upon his shoulders hovering threateningly around his floating hair. How dare you do this to a child when you have lived something far too similar yourself? Have you no shame? No sympathy? He snarls like a wild, angry dog. Do you even care for lives other than your own? This isn't even logical. What do you gain from locking up the kid? Can't he keep living with his mother while you groom his talents? You could have processed literally any other way and it would have been better and more efficient than this. I suppose if my objective was to make Midoriya's power UAs, then your reasoning would be correct. Then what is your objective? This entire shitstorm can't possibly end anyway but badly for you, he spits, and rightly so. Nizu knows the man is right, and he will have to live in hiding soon enough. Midoriya was becoming popular faster than planned, but that just meant faster results. Maybe the poor child had suffered enough for now. As much as he liked to think Midoriya was incapable of bringing harm to someone willingly, everyone had a breaking point and the boy turning villain would bring failure to Nizu's plan. The boy could do with some leeway. I have a proposition. You are not in a position to make any kind of proposition, Nizu. Aizawa advanced menacingly. May I remind you I have the mother's boy hostage? That shut him right up. Thank you. Now, as I was saying, I have a proposition to make. On the condition that one of you wins in a fight against me, I will allow Midoriya to leave the premises in the context of both the week-long internships and the summer camp. Perhaps even let him do a paid internship during the second semester. And if we lose? Then I will also implant a microphone onto Midoriya. Don't you care at all for his dignity? You're treating him like a property, like a lab rat. Nizu ignored the painful pang in his chest. He knew he had crossed a line when he did that. He'd hesitated multiple times and almost couldn't bring himself to do it, but in the end processed with the surgery anyway. In his regret he had thought of removing it before Midoriya would find out, but the boy was too smart for his own good and had connected the dots a few days later. Most likely even earlier had he not been in denial. Midoriya never mentioned it out loud, but the pained and betrayed look he had in his eyes on their next quirk training session was more than sufficient. As much as he regretted his actions, the consequences would all play out in favor of his cause, although he was conscious he'd pay a great price for it. In another world, the Greenette could have made a great apprentice. Nizu mourned internally. Recovery Girl's knuckles were white with the strength in which she was holding the helm of her weapon. I've only known him for a month and a half. She takes a stance, the space between her tiny legs widening and her blade raised to her side, but Midoriya is like a grandson to me. So I do hope you are prepared to lose. Nizu barely avoided the blade that cut straight through his chair, jumping away from the oncoming attack. So Chio would be his opponent, it seemed. Aizawa. Nizu threw a lamp right at Recovery Girl's stomach before back-flipping behind the green couch that accompanies his coffee table. Would you mind waiting for the result in the infirmary? He rolls out of the way, the woman missing his tail by a few millimeters. I fear this will take dash, he grunts from the effort of flinging the couch towards Recovery Girl, who merely uses it as a springboard and successfully sends a kick to his face. A little time. Recovery Girl is grabbed by the leg and sent flying at the wall, but she fights smart and uses the momentum to spring back and cut right through the green cushions, causing the synthetic filling to spread all around them. The rat sighs. And I love this couch. His features turn a little less restrained, less kept together, and he pounces like a wild creature ready to tear into skin with his teeth and claws. Nothing beyond repair. He's not that barbaric. Aizawa has left. The only people that can prevent this fight from going too far are themselves. A squeak leaves Nizu as the razor-sharp blade digs deep into the flesh of his leg while she yelps at the feeling of sharpened teeth digging into her shoulder through her coat, adding more red to the already very bloody not-so-white cloth. She roughly pulls the sword out and slams its handle, once, twice, thrice on the back of his head before he opens his mouth in a gasp just enough for her to push him away, slamming him into a bookshelf. He quickly recovers though and sends the first blunt object he can find into her face, her nose producing a painfully loud crack from the meeting with the Nobel Prize. Definitely broken. The adrenaline permits her to ignore it for now, and so she wipes the blood from her chin, spreading it more than anything else, and jumps at her enemy again, forcing him to climb up the bookshelves fast despite his wounded leg. Shredded books rain down as she mercilessly cuts down the furniture and the knowledge it carries, which causes the white-stained red furry creature to jump away before she can send another hit, ribcage slamming painfully against the ledge of the next bookcase he's seeking shelter to by scratching his way up. Chio runs towards him, intent on cutting down the offending furniture again, but a silver piqûre frame shatters against her wrist, forcing her hold loose and sending her weapon clattering to her feet. I win. The fucker smiles, pushing the bookshelf away from the wall with his legs and sending it clattering down onto the old lady. Nizu digs his claws into the wall to slow his fall and approaches the lone hand that's poking out, disappointed. I must admit I did not expect to win this match, Chio. No answer. Chio? Recovery-san. Fingers twitch and suddenly, his breath leaves his lungs from the force of the bookshelf being slammed into his form and rolling farther after his body, followed by the press of a blade to his throat and a line of blood leaking from his skin, further staining his white fur. I win. Her nose is unnaturally crooked but already starting to heal from her quirk, blood ceasing its leaking onto what's already drying on her chin and painted red teeth. Her wrist is purple and red and a few bruises decorate her face. She's rarely felt so victorious. The blade is pulled away and whipped on the nurse's sleeve before they both get back up. As agreed, Midorya will participate in both the internships and the summer camp. Well done, recovery girl. You haven't lost your touch. Her gaze follows his limping form, finding a half-desk to sit on. You know, Nizu, had it been anybody else, you'd probably be dead right now. The mouse keeps his back to her, but the way one ear twitches tells Chio he's listening. The most anyone would get for killing you is 2 years and a fine. As much as you are intelligent, you're still considered an animal by law. I know. When this gets out, you'll probably be sentenced to death. I knew. Recovery girl sighs. Why are you doing this, Nizu? That I know this is wrong. He spoke in a way she had never heard in her 30 years of working at his side, barely above a whisper. But it's my best shot. Nothing is worth hurting anyone this way, she says before leaving the wounded creature to its lonesome. I'm sorry for how I acted yesterday. It was unbecoming of me to overreact this way, and I hope you can all forgive my lapse of judgment. Izuku recited as if he was reading from a book and bowed. He barely even made the effort to smile, and it showed. His classmates were worried. His homeroom teacher was very worried. Katsuki didn't know how to feel. It's okay, Izuku. That guy shouldn't have been so insensitive. Uraraka-kun is absolutely right. You had every right to be upset. Although, I must ask, why are you and Bakugo not in your school-issued uniforms? It is clearly stated in UA's rules. Katsuki could feel the icy emerald glare pass over him before the Greenette's features artificially softened when they went back to glasses, playing the best performance he could be ours to play for his friends. Oh, there was an incident and they ended up stained beyond repair, so we'll have to spend the day like that until we get new ones in our sizes. He mocked embarrassment, but everyone and their entire ancestry could clearly see the heart was not in it. Hagakure, bless her heart, immediately went looking for distractions. Well, I think it's lucky we get to see you like that. You look really cute, Izuku-kun. He wore a white shirt on which was hand-painted colorful splatters and an English phrase in black, Kuakuso aru ovu? Whatever that means, tucked into black pants and an opened gray dolman cardigan on which was pinned his student ID, to make sure no one mistakenly took him for an intruder. Thanks. He smiled softly before walking to his seat. The rest of the morning played out. Well, not normally but not catastrophically. Midorya did not make a single joke or prank all day. In fact, he barely made a noise. The only time he stood out a little was when Present Mike stared at his shirt for a full minute before Deku said something in English. Boy, do they keep forgetting he's an excellent student despite his jokes, and the man jerked out of whatever plane of existence he'd been transported to. Classes ended for the first part of the day, signaling the time for the nerd's usual visit to the nurse's office, yet unlike he'd normally do, Deku told his 2 followers to go eat without waiting for him. Good for him. Katsuki didn't care. Except then, the nerd started approaching him. Can we talk? Once everyone is out. Katsuki didn't answer. To be honest, he really wanted to up and leave, but he was curious at the same time. So he waited. Giant purple fucker looked worried, but eventually left after a nod from Deku. The F was up with these two anyway? They waited a few more minutes to make sure no one was eavesdropping before finally, the nerd spoke. I'm sorry for punching you. And for staining your uniform. The blonde grunted in acknowledgement. I'd also like to thank you for taking me to Recovery Girl. But you wouldn't mean it. But I wouldn't mean it. Now she knows I've been tagged like a dog. So I can't truly thank you for that. The two sat still, each on a desk not looking at each other. There's one more thing I wanted to say. Katsuki rose an eyebrow. What you said yesterday. I can't agree with that. You said because I had a quirk, I wasn't really a Deku. That it didn't mean the same anymore. That I shouldn't hurt myself. And I should ask for help when I need it. Because I wasn't useless or a liability. The greenette turned to look at him, truly look at him, with eyes that were neither saddened or angry. Just cold. But whether or not I have a quirk isn't what determines what I am. My name is Midorya Izuku, not Astro Kinesis. Deku stood up, apparently already done with the conversation. I put my speech on your desk. Just so you knew the content. I won't hold it against you if it makes you hate me more. After all, convincing myself you somehow changed was my mistake. That's all I wanted to say. The next 2 weeks were intense to say the least, training-wise. Most of the class were out on the field, pushing their quirks to the limit until they can barely stay standing. Except Deku, who was doing whatever the F somewhere on his own, sometimes dragging the tail karate fucker along with him. The a-hole progressively started joking again, but pranks were off the table it seemed. He gave each of their classmates in Class 1B a full document explaining his quirk, its weakness and its advantages as a show of no hard feelings, and most likely to get a good laugh at the festival, though of course he didn't mention the attracting the moon thing. Some openly laughed at the foolishness. Others were angry he'd underestimate them that badly. Some were intrigued. Some were resigned that whatever information they obtained, they would lose to Deku anyway. Katsuki refused the doc. He'd read the speech and he knew any information on astrokinesis was useless. When he read the first sentence of that speech, he felt anger flare inside of him, but it immediately dissipated. He had no right to be angry at Midorya. He said those words. He meant to bring pain at that time. He had no right to prevent that speech. He had no right to complain about the unfair victory he'd get either. It set him off to know, and the green fucker wasn't even going to try, but the same weird feelings he got back when he first decided to crash at his place told him to let it go and find someone else that would give him a real fight. If the fucker wanted to lose for the sake of some pretty morals no one would get behind, then it was his choice. Katsuki didn't care. Yes, he did. Midorya could ridicule himself for all he cared. Today was the day. Izuku was going to tell the world that they were here. Jesus F, that was terrifying. He was about to very openly assault common views. Whatever he did after that speech would affect an enormous part of the population. He could not afford to F this up. Oh God, his mom might be watching. Are you alright, Midorya-kun? Izuku lightly slapped himself, something his classmates now knew was a way to pump himself up. Yeah, just a little nervous. Thanks for asking. You don't have to worry too much. I'm sure whatever you may have written will be inspiring to the crowds. Thanks. Oh right. Izuku produced 2 of 3 bento boxes out of his bag and handed one to each of his friends before taking his bag to put away in his locker until lunchtime. I woke up early from the nerves, so I decided to make you guys lunch too. That way we won't have to buy some. Is that alright with you guys? Midorya, you keep switching from being an absolute sheethead to the most adorable creature on earth, and I kind of want to know how you're doing that. Kaminari interjected. Before Izuku could blow a raspberry at the blonde in a very mature response, a low ASMR-ish, that's the best way Izuku would describe it, voice called his name from behind him. Midorya. The greenette turned towards the voice and found himself face to face, or rather face to chest because he's so small, with the usually silent Todoroki. Oh hey, did you want food too? The bicolored boy glared at him. Clearly he didn't want food. Objectively speaking, you're stronger than me. And it seems more than a few heroes have their eyes on you. Unfortunately I am aware, please don't remind me. Okay, yeah, he did not like that. But I am going to beat your quirk. There's a bit of silence. A pin could drop and you'd hear it as loud as a cannon. Oh, you sweet, innocent candy cane child. Izuku pat his rival his arm mockingly with a sickeningly self-satisfied smile which earned him to have his hand slapped away. You're about to be very, very disappointed. Hey, come on you guys. Midorya, we know you're strong, but don't just write everyone off. It's already kind of insulting you gave us your weaknesses. And Todoroki too. Don't go picking a fight like that when we're about to start. I'm not here to make friends. The half-hot, half-cold user shrugged Kirishima off and headed for the door. Well, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life. Izuku couldn't help but say. Don't you remember what I said the first day? Connections are as much of a resource as your quirk or gear. If you don't have a knife, don't buy a sharpener. If you don't want connections, don't go to UA. At that point Todoroki was giving him the killer glare of doom, very displeased with Midoriya's comments. Take private lessons and get your hero license in freelance. But don't go taking the spot someone could have used properly. With that said, there's a big chance you'll beat me. But a lot of people are going to be counting on me, so I can't go down without a fight. Everybody. Welcome to UA's annual sports festival. Present Mike screams in his mic despite having a voice-enhancing quirk, most likely deafening any spectators close to the commentating booth. Everybody, are you ready? It's time for the first years to enter the stage. Izuku steps at the front of his classmates on slightly shaky legs alongside Ochako and Tenya towards the arena. All eyes are on them now. The UA Festival. The huge battle where heroes in the making cross swords once a year. First and foremost, let us introduce you the rising stars who escaped unscathed from a villain attack. You know them, it's Class 1A. Izuku has the urge to face palm when the camera's unsubtle zoom in on his face, however he opts with keeping his expression as neutral as possible. Not a smile, but it's better than nothing. They're really laying it on thick there. Really? I didn't notice. I think they're just trying to hype things up a bit. Clearly the other classes haven't received the message because the amount of death glares Izuku, not Class 1, Izuku specifically. Because it's his demon fault he stopped those villains, is receiving beats any of his records back when he was Quirkless. Todoroki's glare counts for at least 10. It gets worse when Present Mike half-buttes the other classes' introductions. It's time for the player pledge, the clearly unmotivated Aizawa announces. But doesn't Midnight usually do referee for the first-year stage? I heard she left after a disagreement with the principal last year. Izuku had a sneaking suspicion he knew what that disagreement was about. Representing the students is Midorya Izuku from Class 1A. This was it. No turning back now. As he made his way to the stage, Present Mike recounted his exploits, the meteor incident, the 10,000 points plus and the USJ, no doubt to atone for Aizawa-sensei's poor entertaining skills, but the words flew right over his head. Aizawa regarded him with a raised eyebrow, having very much noticed how much Izuku was shaking. His heart pounded loudly, deafening. But he could do it. He had to. If you want a quirk so badly, take a swan dive of the roof and pray you get one in your next life. Not a single person knew how to react to that statement in the entire arena. What the hell? What kind of pledge was that? Quirkless people. Quirkless people represent 20% of the population of the world. Izuku continued despite feeling anything but confident. Said like that doesn't sound like so much, right? But it's 1 in 5 people. And what happens to this fifth of the population? 1 out of 3 quirkless people are killed in a hate crime, by their own parents upon diagnosis in 74% of the cases. His heart calms down little by little and the tremble in his voice disappears. Another third kill themselves because the discrimination is too much. What happens to the last part, you may wonder. Or not. Maybe you don't care. I'm going to tell you anyway. 17% of the world population lives in crime, faking a power, underpaid or homeless because they were born the way humans have been born for approximately 200,000 years, without quirks. And somehow that makes us inferior? People think we're limited to quirks. If you have a scary quirk, you're a villain. If you have a weak quirk, you're weak. If you don't have a quirk, you're nothing. But I'm not going to just make a speech and cross my fingers you'll think, hey, maybe he's right. I'm going to prove to everyone I'm right. I'm going to show every single one of you I don't need a quirk to become a hero. How am I going to do that? He pauses for suspense. By going as far as I can in this tournament the way I've lived for 10 years of my life. Feeling a little daring, Izuku grins at the cameras, a thumb pointed at his chest. So keep an eye out for this useless quirkless waste of space. Every single student he gave his quirks information to instantly realize he FE'd them over. Todoroki has rarely felt so furious at someone who wasn't his father. We have a problem. Nizu starts with, "Is this about what happened to Tensei?" Present Mike asked worried. If only. Midorya and Todoroki's mothers were taken by the League of Villains. Total silence. Shoyuta has the urge to punch the principal in the jaw. They were. What? Recovery Girl is the first to explode. She has an understandably short fuse where Nizu is concerned these days. As calmly as he can, the principal explains. During the sports festival, the hospital in which they reside was under attack by a pair of villains that matched the description of the two main perpetrators of the USJ attack. Midoriya and Todoroki were both in the same room, which brings me to believe Todoroki-san was merely an opportunity and not the intended target. There were signs of a struggle and both women were gone as well as both villains. The blood on the scene is currently being analyzed, but the results should be back shortly. How ironic. Shoyuta can't help but snort. So the good news is you lost your hostage. The bad news is, the League now has a hostage over Endeavor and his family, and a strong contender for most powerful person in the world. Smartest hero in Japan, my butt. Hostage? All Might asks, frowning. What are you talking about? Go on then, explain yourself, principal. Cementos crosses his arms. I'm sure all these heroes would love to hear exactly what you did to Midoriya. What happened to Midoriya? I'm pretty sure he's depressed, but I thought it was stress from suddenly having a quirk. Isn't it? Poor kid cried again at breakfast. All I did was ask how he was doing, said Lunch Rush, shaking his head. Finally, Present Mike seemed to lose patience. Principal, just what is going on? Everyone turned towards the rodent. Nizu's beady black eyes blinked, shifting from one teacher to the next and ending up on Recovery Girl's scowl. His tail twitched nervously out of sight. Finally he sighed, preparing himself for the backlash. Some of you may have heard about the Hawks scandal 2 years ago, he started. Present Mike was the only one who seemed to know about this. Shoyuta merely raised an eyebrow as he listened to the blonde. There were rumors that Takami Kigo had been bought from his family and trained by the HPSC in inhumane conditions. Those were quickly smothered and dismissed as false due to lack of witnesses or traces of physical violence and overall disbelief that the Hero Commission would commit such acts. All Might's face had gone a dangerous shade of pale. So he wasn't as dense as he had thought. Those rumors were, in fact, true, the rat confirmed. That's, 13 gasped. After the events of the meteor incident, the HPSC quickly became interested in Midoriya. I simply took the initiative. Midoriya would become a hero and the commission wouldn't need to lift a finger. And separating Midoriya from his mother? Banning him from leaving campus? Surgically planting a tracker on him without his consent? Is that humane to you? Shinso came to me, worried out of his mind because the kid got huge scars on his back from trying to remove it himself, for crying out loud. Shoyuta shouted at the rat. And Ida with his brother, worst of all, he added. It's obvious to anyone with a pair of eyes that Midoriya is emotionally unstable, and seeing his best friend with huge new scars in the changing room the day after an outburst has had a huge impact on him, and all of the boys for that matter. Thank if the girls don't know about the scars. They all think he's suicidal, and I wouldn't be surprised if we find him shoes off on a rooftop if anything happens to his mother. The hero finished his rant, panting. Jesus Christ, we can't tell him. All Might slipped. And Shoyuta realized with growing horror that yes, they would have to hide the fact his mother had been kidnapped from Midoriya unless they wanted him to sink deeper into the quicksand. He was very close to snapping, and one wrong move could risk his life. That or a whole lot more. Sorry, we were a bit pressed for time. Does everything fit all right? It's perfect, thank you. Ray nodded politely. A little tight around the shoulders, but I won't complain. Inko said as well. Good. You're going to need those disguises if you want to help the investigation. Tsukachi smiled at the two women. As for these two naughty boys, they're going to need a little. Midnight smirked, liking her lips in an unnecessarily lewd manner at the sight of the knocked-out villains they had kept sedated in a corner of the warehouse sheltering them. I got it. Tsukachi pulled out a pair of quirk erasing shackles. Izuku was right. Inko blinked. You really do pull these out of nowhere. Tsukachi ignored the comment, busying himself with immobilizing Shigaraki and Kurogiri. Right now, we don't have much. Where the HPSC is concerned. There was the Hawks investigation, but it was swept under the rug after the original investigator mysteriously disappeared. Everything pertaining to that case is gone, or at the least very well hidden. We've tried contacting Takami ourselves, but he was extremely reluctant. Midnight added to the information. Most likely, he talked to the investigator last time, and there were consequences. She winced. So we only have whatever videos, pictures, and reports Lunch Rush is sending in on little Izuku. Where Endeavor is concerned, we lack the photo evidence. I'm afraid that statements from his mentally unstable wife, no offense none taken, won't be taken seriously enough to lead into an open investigation for the number 2 hero. Ray bit her lip in frustration. Could she do nothing for her children? She didn't want to think about it. So all we have right now is… Inko glanced at the villains, the chapped one slowly shifting awake. Midnight's grin widened. Oh, ladies and gentlemen. It's showtime.